Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Apologies for the quick, for the short delay in getting you started this morning. So we'll be waiting on for everyone to sign on. So we'll give it a quick moment. So appreciate everyone for coming on as well. Just wanted to remind you all that we are utilizing a Zoom webinar uh, fashion. So that means everyone attending as an attendee will automatically have your microphone and your cameras off. So just wanted to let you know that that's how we're set up this morning. So of course, just want to introduce myself as you're all chiming in and signing in right now. I'm Cynthia Cabot with the Guam Coalition Against Sexual Assaults and Family Violence. And we certainly welcome all of our participants joining us as panelists this morning. So thank you, everyone. For some, it is our morning. And then for others, it is well into the early evening, I should say. So appreciate everyone for being a part of our Guam Collaboration Project Roundtable. So let me just get my screen up for everyone so you can see what I'm seeing as well. So just wanted to point out a few, as you become familiar to many of you, have been doing Zoom meetings and Zoom webinars and other online platforms since last year. Well, perhaps thanks to COVID, this is also one way that we are able to provide these more readily than having to have you all come over, say, what is it? For some, it may be 8 hours just coming from Hawaii and all the way from the East Coast, probably about 24, 25, 26 hours. And of course, that also means then via Zoom, you won't have to quarantine as is our requirements these days. But to all and everyone who's signing in as well, we want to say thank you for joining us. This is the Guam Collaboration Project Roundtable. We are focusing on reflecting on history and culture to address violence in our communities today. So first off, I just want to say much thanks to our funders for being able to allow us to provide this to you. And of course, that would be the Office on Violence Against Women, as well through our coalition funding from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services through the Family Violence Prevention and Services Act. And then thank you to all of our federal partner agencies who are joining us this morning as well. And here's the lineup for today. We have quite an extensive lineup for you. And so, you know what, for that, I'm sure you don't mind that we don't have a break scheduled in between. But what we do say is please practice self-care. You know when you need to get up and go. And of course, we will have this recorded so you'll be able to check it out again for those sections that you do miss. So while I'm doing the introductions, go run and grab your favorite beverage. This morning we have Catherine Chan, the director for the Office of Trafficking in Persons, to do our welcome remarks. We are fortunate to have Ambassador Carmen Cantor doing our opening remarks. And then we'll have our partners from Department of Defense with Ann Dodd speaking on the Fleet and Family Support Center, and Robert Frasco, Special Agent with Naval Criminal Investigative Service. And we're also fortunate that the Acting Commissioner on the Administration of Native Americans, Michelle Salve, is able to join us as well. And then in the second half of this morning, we have Jane Segebrecht with the Health Resources and Services Administration, and then support from our TA providers as well, Jessica Walls with the Child Welfare Capacity Building Collaborative Center for States, Elizabeth Lang with Office for Victims of Crime, Human Trafficking Capacity Building Center, and of course, Lainey Gibbs with the Training and Technical, she's a Training and Technical Assistance Specialist with the OJP Territories Financial Support Center that we just recently learned about So we have tons of information to share with everyone. Just wanted to point out that we do have webinar materials, such as our presenters' biographies. We have also their slides that we will be sharing with you as well as information that may be useful and other handouts. And so please go to our website, www.guamcoalition.org. If we were seeing you face to face, this is the time when you would have opened up your folders where we would have prepared everything nicely there. But it's easier now as you click on the blue login button located on the top right-hand corner of our webpage. The username to put in is Roundtable. Password, and it's all caps, MAR 2021. So that will get you to the materials that you can download and review. We'll probably have it on for about a month or 2 months, sometimes even longer, but we figured within the next 2 months, you'll be able to access what you need. We were also fortunate to work with the University of Guam to provide continuing education unit. And so that's 1 CEU for the 10 contact hours. Unfortunately, you must be present to be able to access that, and which means then that your computer is going to be open the whole time since last week up until tomorrow on our sessions in order to be able to access that. So you will need to contact University of Guam directly, and this is the email. You don't need to have to write that down right away. We do have that also posted on our website. Just a reminder, please don't forget to complete your evaluation. Yes, you will get the link from Zoom as a reminder to please do that. And just a big hint to those, if you wish to have your certificate of attendance, at least submit one. If you are seeking CEUs, you must complete one for each day. And for those of you who are requesting for contact hours, likewise, on your certificate, then please complete an evaluation. But more importantly, your feedback to us is very important. So that's why we stress the importance of hearing back from you after each day's webinar. So just wanted to put in a plug. We still have tomorrow. Tomorrow's our day 4. And this is where we have our panel discussions focusing on training, data, on the impact on culture, the intersection of culture on violence prevention, and then 2, on the role of partnerships. So we certainly want to hear from you. And as far as our panelists are concerned, that's you. So we just want to remind you that tomorrow will be on a Zoom meeting format. So yes, I sent out another link for tomorrow specifically. So please be sure to pre-register for that to get the separate link for it. So we want to say thank you so much to you for joining us, for those of you who have joined us since day 1 and all last week. And so even more so today, we wish to thank our partners. Since we have quite a presentation today, I just want to call on Director Catherine Chan to give her opening remarks, or welcome rather. Catherine, thank you.
Half a day, everyone. Hello, Cynthia. Thank you so much for hosting us all today. This is day 3, and for those of you who are able to join last week, this is a continuation of the learnings that we had from the first 2 sessions, and we look forward to our culminating conversation tomorrow. Good morning. My name is Catherine Chan, and I'm the Director of the Office on Trafficking in Persons at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And I wanted to give you a little bit of context for our collaboration today. Today, you'll hear from several federal partners across the Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Justice, Department of Defense. Tomorrow, we'll hear more with local stakeholder engagement, but one of the precursor for this webinar session series that we've kicked off together with the Guam Coalition actually started back in the summer of 2019. So imagine pre-pandemic months. The Office on Trafficking in Persons, we joined a trip organized by the HHS Administration for Native Americans, and we have our acting commissioner here on the call today, and you'll hear from her shortly. But the purpose of this trip, it was a visit to Hawaii and some of the Pacific Islands to have a stronger understanding around the intersections of various forms of violence. And in the case, in our case for 2019, we were specifically looking at the intersection between missing and murdered Native persons with human trafficking, recognizing that both of these issues of violence are on a continuum inclusive of child maltreatment, intimate partner violence, and other forms of interpersonal and community violence. And when we visited with stakeholders and leaders in Guam, we heard both from the governor's office, as well as from local government and non-government agencies of concerns for potential increases in violence as the island is confronting various changes in population dynamics. You may have heard last week, and you may hear more tomorrow around the migration inflows and outflows in the Pacific and Micronesian region, the anticipated increase in military personnel as the US Marine base relocates from Okinawa to Guam, changes in tourism patterns. And with all that, one of the takeaway points that we had in coming back to Washington, DC, was just a question of what could we do to help contribute to stronger local federal collaborations, civilian military collaborations. Are there opportunities to learn from each other of what's working? Where are the gaps? How can we strengthen technical assistance on the island? How can we strengthen referral protocols and public awareness campaigns, since so many of these forms of violence are interconnected? So we came back to Washington, DC, started having some of these conversations, then the pandemic hit, and some of those conversations were halted to address pressing public health needs. And then we identified a point for collaboration, in part through many of the federal partnerships that you'll hear from today, and also through a premier research institution, the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. We here at the Administration for Children and Families at the Department of Health and Human Services, we are a collaborating organization with the Bloomberg American Health Initiative. And Shane Bryan, who is the Partnership and Engagement Officer with that initiative, has joined us on the call today. And I think he's been with us through these series. But what we've identified is strengthening not just the local federal collaboration, but also public-private collaborations, and to explore ways we can help bring more resources, not just on training and technical assistance and victim services, but also bringing in subject matter expertise and connecting that expertise in regards to research, data collection, culturally informed practices, which we heard so much about last week. And so I'm so grateful to all the partners, Cynthia, for your leadership, to the governor's office, to all the local stakeholders, our federal partners, the Bloomberg American Health Initiative. And if you'd like to learn more, we can put some information in the chat. And finally, I just wanted to transition with just an appreciation for the learning opportunity and the learning space that the Guam Coalition helped to create for all of us last week, learning about the very personal and also communal experiences of violence historically, linking to contemporary times, learning about the legacies of colonialism, the legacies of other forms of systemic oppressions, discrimination, and also the incredible power and resiliency of culturally centered approaches to healing and to creating innovative solutions to seemingly entrenched problems in the community. So the key theme for us is partnership and learning from not just what we heard last week, but learning from the literature, the oral histories, the stories, the creative arts, the science, the data, and bringing all of that together to strengthen these partnerships with an overarching aim of reducing violence in our nation and certainly with our partners in Guam. And then finally, in terms of where this fits in with federal administration priorities, there are several executive orders under the Biden-Harris administration at the national level where these violence prevention efforts are integrated into ongoing commitments and priorities to address gender-based violence, racial justice, anti-discrimination work, in addition to strengthening public health, national security, and public safety issues. So again, I thank all our partners on the call today. We look forward to learning more, and also particularly today in day 3, to sharing what federal resources are available to strengthen some of these bridges and relationships. Thank you very much. Back over to you, Cynthia.
Thank you so much, Catherine. We certainly appreciate the collaboration working with you and with Kaylin Crockett, who was initially on hand to support this project as well. And just wanted to do a call out and shout out actually to Jane Flores with the Governor's Community Outreach Federal Programs Office for the continued support too of the Office of the Governor. So next on hand, we are certainly fortunate too, who happen to be on island. And I was able to have the opportunity to meet with her too. We have the ambassador to the Federated States, the US ambassador, I should say, to the Federated States of Micronesia. So I'm going to be calling on Ambassador Carmen Cantor to join us. She's previously served as the director of the Office of Civil Service Human Resource Management in the Bureau of Human Resources, as executive director for the Bureaus of Educational and Cultural Affairs and International Information Programs. She served as the executive director of the Bureau of Counterterrorism and as the director of the Office of Recruitment, Examination, and Employment with the U.S. Department of State. Before rejoining the Department of State, Ms. Cantor worked as the director of the Office of Civil Rights at the Foreign Agriculture Service and director of the Office of Equal Employment Opportunity with the U.S. Federal Maritime Commission in Washington, D.C. Her almost 30-year federal career also includes several positions in the Office of Civil Rights and in the Bureau of Human Resources at the U.S. Department of State and at the U.S. Postal Service. So certainly she has quite an extensive bio that we want to share, and we posted even more on our website, so you'll be able to download that and learn more about her. But even more importantly, she's here in our training room as well. So thank you so much to Ambassador Cantor for joining us this morning.
Well, thank you so much for the kind introduction, Cynthia. And let me start by giving everyone a warm welcome and a special hello to the people from FSM participating today. Hafaday, Kaselelie, Lenwo, Rananim, Mogetin, and Ola. I want to thank Cynthia and the Guam Coalition Against Sexual Assault and Family Violence for hosting this incredible event. I know that part 1 of this roundtable reflected on history and culture to reduce violence in our communities. I applaud everyone for taking the time to reflect in this way, as history is a tremendous teacher. Today, I am pleased to open part 2 of the roundtable, where we will learn more about partners in the region and talk about agencies and their resources. I want to thank all the panel members participating today. I understand that many of you are like me, proud representatives of the U.S. federal government departments and agencies. I commend you on your service and your contributions in this key area that affects all of us. As many of you probably know, April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and we bring attention and awareness during this important month to the challenges of gender-based violence and all forms of sexual assault and family violence. And we really need to, because it's not just a local issue or a state issue or even a regional issue. Sexual assault and family-based violence are very serious global issues. Let me read you a key passage from the United Nations report, The World's Women 2020, Trends and Statistics. Violence against women and girls remains a global issue. During COVID-19 lockdowns, many women and girls have been isolated in unsafe environments where they are at a heightened risk of experiencing intimate partner violence. Around 1/3 of women worldwide have experienced physical and/or sexual violence by an intimate partner, and 18% have experienced such violence in the past 12 months. And we live this challenge in the United States, where according to the Department of Justice, 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men are sexually abused in their lifetime. During my last year in the FSM, I began to understand the challenges of family violence, of modern and traditional culture, both clashing and at the same time trying to find solutions to manage community and family sexual assault and violence in families. And there is a key word here, solutions. If I may for a moment, let me turn our attention toward our island neighbors in the FSM and share what the U.S. Embassy's role is doing, what we're doing to support solutions to sexual assault and family violence in the Federated States of Micronesia. As I know you discussed last week, there are many causes of sexual abuse and family violence. What we have learned is that a key antidote to this societal illness is for women to have the economic power to make their own decisions. The United States has directly addressed this need by providing a grant of $2.2 million to the International Organization for Migration, IOM, to implement the Inspiring Women's Advancement Through Collective Action, or IWAP project. IOM will implement the project throughout the freely associated states, and each of the 3 freely associated states and 3 United States embassies will manage the grant. IWA launched last month, and FSM President Panuelo provided encouraging remarks, which included a change in policy to allow women to take maternity leave from 6 to 12 weeks. As part of the grant, U.S. Embassy Colonia in Micronesia and IOM will train NGOs in grant writing and host additional small grant writing workshops with local women groups and individuals. The U.S. government has powerful objectives to raise awareness of gender discrimination, teach financial literacy, use fora to train women in leadership, and provide grants to small women-owned businesses and train them in small business finance, advertising, and other key entrepreneurial skills. Giving women financial power and spurring development of skills and self-esteem serves women and their communities by enabling them to live more resilient lives and make life decisions from a position of strength. Last year, the embassy participated in the Blackout Violence Pompeii campaign to raise awareness about domestic violence issues. And we're bringing attention to this issue again this year through another online campaign where each Thursday we wear black to stand in solidarity with women who have been victims of gender-based violence. I encourage you to join us and wear black each Thursday this month and to post it on your social media pages. Please follow us and share our work by liking our Facebook page titled U.S. Embassy Colonia. And just to give you all an example of how powerful these campaigns can be, last year, Pompeii State established a hotline for victims of gender-based violence, including sexual assault. And this is, a direct result of the work that we all did. We all can make a difference. Thanks to everyone for your participation today. I wish you a fantastic and productive day. Muchísimas gracias, Kalanga Kinisochapur. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Cantor. And you can certainly look to our continued support as well. And I'm going to take this opportunity to just give you a heads up that thanks to our being able to provide training via Zoom platforms, we have also additional training that we have extended, and I've already seen folks from IOM sign up. So we certainly want to continue to reach out to our neighboring island partners to join us as well, and know that we're here to support you. And of course, to support the people from the region who live here on Guam and reside here on Guam. So thank you again for sharing with us your thoughts and your ideas and the solutions that you're looking at, certainly to address the violence in our communities. Thank you so much. And without further ado, we have quite a lineup for you this morning. So I want to first start out with our key partners here on island. So oftentimes we look to them also and figure out, well, we know where they're located. That we have several military branches here on island. So we are very fortunate that through the Department of Defense, we have our key partners representing the Fleet and Family Support Center. So I'm going to reach out and call on Ann Dodd, who is waiting in the wings here upstairs in our training room. Just wanted to do a quick intro to Ann. She's a licensed clinical social worker with over 30 years experiencing working in the behavioral health field. She received both her undergraduate and graduate degrees from the University of Southern California. Yay, Trojans, right? So Ann began working with the Department of Defense in 2009 with the Army at Tripler Medical Center in Hawaii, where she helped set up social work department in the emergency room. She then worked at the Warrior Transition Battalion, providing case management to soldiers and especially helping them transition to civilian life upon medical retirement or separation. And then also as an embedded social worker for the 130th Engineer Brigade and the ATSC Behavioral Health Clinic. Ann made the decision. So here's a fun fact about Ann. She made the decision to pursue assignments overseas in the Pacific, as she is an avid scuba diver. Her first assignment was in Okinawa, Japan, to manage the family advocacy program for the Army. And wanting to experience another branch service, Ann joined the Navy as a counseling services administrator with Fleet and Family Support Center and has been there since 2019. So thank you so much. And joining us in our training room upstairs is Ann Dodd. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I hope everyone is having a fabulous morning. Again, my name is Ann Dodd, and I do work for the Navy Fleet and Family Support Center. My title is the Counseling Service Administrator, and I am here to present an overview on how the Navy responds to child abuse and neglect and intimate partner violence.
So yes, we know Ann is muted, and I think she is navigating to get her slides on. Cue me if you want me to handle it for you on my end.
Yes, that would be nice on her end, and I don't have to worry about how do I handle this one.
I heard you, Ann.
Sorry.
No problem. Let me just get that situated for you in a moment. But going ahead with your introduction while I find your slides on my computer.
So with me today, I have two members of the Fleet and Family. I have the Fleet and Family Director, Miss Marcy Baza, and I have our Family Advocacy Educator, Lori Naputi, with me today. She's going to help answer some questions at the end of my presentation. So I'll just go ahead. The agenda today, what I'd like to cover is, of course, I'm going to cover a little bit about statistics to kind of do a comparison between the national, the Department of Defense, and then here on Guam, I'll talk a little bit about the historical perspectives of family advocacy program with the Department of Defense. We'll talk a little bit about the goals and functions of the family advocacy. We'll talk about the reporting processes that go on, what the coordinated community response system is all about, what the roles are with the family advocacy, and then open that up. I'll talk about the reporting options that are available to our military members. So one of the first things that I want to address here is that within the military, the beneficiaries that can utilize the family advocacy program is our active duty personnel along with their family dependents.
Okay, do you see your slides now?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much.
Okay, just cue me in, I'm ready.
Okay, and then just say next slide.
Absolutely.
Oh, there we go. So I don't see the next slide queued up. Okay. Do I need to press enter?
No, just let me know since
Okay. Okay.
it might
So
get more complicated.
Okay.
Just let me know.
Okay, we can go on to the next slide.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about national statistics. Okay, you can go ahead and change the slide. Oh, you can see it? Oh, okay. All right, so according to the data collected in 2018 from the Children's Bureau in the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Children and Families, on average, 5 children die every day in America from abuse and neglect. In 2018, there was 4.3 million reports of child abuse that were made to Child Protective Service agencies across the United States. An estimated 1,770 children died due to abuse and neglect. Neglect was the predominant cause of 72.8% of those deaths. Next slide, please. Oh, I see. The military is not immune to incidents of child abuse. Again, according to the DoD reports on child abuse and neglect, domestic abuse in the military for fiscal year 2019, there were 5,600 confirmed incidents of child abuse and neglect. 59.5% of these incidents were due to neglect. Physical abuse came in second at 20.66%, emotional abuse at 16.02%, and sexual abuse at 3.79%. There were 16 child abuse related deaths reported to FAP. Of the 16 deaths, 75% were less than a year old. The active duty service member was responsible for 10 of the 16 fatalities. And of the alleged perpetrators, it was equal across male and females. Next slide. According to the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, the National Intimate Partner in Sexual Violence Survey of 2015 data brief, which was released in November 2018, 1 in 4 women and 1 in 10 men have experienced physical violence and sexual violence and or stalking by an intimate partner. Over 1/3 men and 1/3 women in the U.S. experienced emotional abuse by an intimate partner. 16% of the victims were killed by an intimate partner. Half of the female homicide victims in the U.S. are killed by a current or former male intimate partner. The military is not immune to incidents of intimate partner violence. According to the Department of Defense report on child abuse, neglect, and domestic abuse in the military for fiscal year 2019, 7,921 incidents of intimate partner violence was reported amongst all military branches. 66% of the victims of intimate partner abuse were female in these confirmed incidents. In fiscal year 2019, there were 12 intimate partner violence fatalities that were reported to FAP across all branches of service. 9 of the 12 fatalities, the alleged abuser was an active member of the military. In Guam, I took data from the year 2019 to kind of be in comparison with the national statistics and the Department of Defense, so you can kind of see what's going on here. There was a total of 74 incidents of maltreatment. Of these, 36 incidents were of child abuse and neglect, while 38 incidents were intimate partner violence. There's a couple of things that are noteworthy here. A referral to family advocacy may have multiple incidents of maltreatment associated with that referral. For example, if an intimate partner violence referral comes in, one or more incidents of intimate partner violence may be identified, and those would be physical, emotional, sexual, or neglect. Along with that could be incidents of child abuse or maltreatment, such as physical, emotional, sexual, and neglect. An intimate partner referral may end up being a restricted report as well, which means command and law enforcement would not be involved in the case, and the case would not go up to the IDC for disposition, whether the incident met criteria or not. I will be explaining a little bit more about restricted port later on in my presentation. In response to the prevalence of child abuse and intimate partner violence in the military, Congress mandated the Department of Defense to implement the Family Advocacy Program. Each branch service was responsible for standing up its FAP program. Several years ago, the Department of Defense decided that the FAP process should be standardized across all branch services and instituted the Department of Defense Coordinated Community Response System to prevent and respond to reports of child abuse and neglect and initiate partner abuse. These policies and guidance are written to ensure all military branches work toward the unified goal of eliminating and reducing incidents of abuse and ensure that we are all on the same page when we're responding to these incidents of abuse. The Navy's Family Advocacy Program was established in 1976, and it is now under the oversight of the Fleet and Family Support Center. Again, the FAP services are designated for active duty service members and their families. Are you aware of Talia Williams? She was a 5-year-old who was tortured on multiple occasions and finally beaten to death by her father, an active duty Army specialist at the time, and her stepmother in 2005 at Wheeler Army Airfield in Hawaii. The father was subsequently sentenced to life in federal prison, while the stepmother was sentenced to 20 years for testifying against him. The worst part of this case is that there were multiple opportunities that were appallingly missed by Army personnel to protect Talia. As a result, Talia Williams' Child Abuse Notification Act, or better known as Talia's Law, H.R. 3894, was passed in December 2016. The federal law requires, and I will quote, a member of the armed forces, civilian employee of the Department of Defense, or a contractor employee working on a military installation who is mandated by federal regulations or state law to report known or suspected incidences of child abuse and neglect shall provide the report directly to the state child protective services or another appropriate state agency in addition to the members or employees' chain of command or any designated department of point of contact. Next slide, please. The DoD has stipulated that all incidents of suspected child abuse be reported to the Family Advocacy Program. The Navy's policy responding to child abuse is very clear. All incidents and suspected incidents must be reported to FAP. The only reporting exceptions are the chaplain and those with an attorney and client relationship who are given special confidentiality privileges. If the incident is life-threatening or in progress, 911 or base security should be contacted first. The DoD instruction requires FAP personnel to report all suspected cases of child abuse to the local child protective services. Some states require all adults, regardless of whether they're mandated reporters, to report suspected cases of child abuse and neglect to local civilian authorities. State laws will trump Navy and the Department of Defense policy. Proof is not needed to report to FAP. Any reasonable suspicion of abuse must be reported to FAP. Reasonable suspicion is an objectively reasonable basis for suspecting child abuse or intimate partner has been maltreated. Next slide, please. If policy is the backbone, consider command the muscle. The command is responsible for leading the enforcing the abuse prevention and response to the installation. The command plays a big role in shaping the military community, which is why the FAP works to facilitate and support the command in this responsibility by providing notifications and expert guidance. FAP serves the command through protecting the families by providing treatment or referral to decrease the likelihood of abuse, strengthening military performance by ensuring service members and their families are resilient, maintaining the morale of military units by helping service members and families learn healthy behaviors to reduce stress, which could affect mission readiness, improving the reputation of the military by having written policies and procedures aimed at responding in an appropriate and consistent way and building credibility. Next slide, please. The Department of Defense and the Office of Secretary of Defense recognize that strengthening prevention strategies will decrease the number of incidents of abuse. Thus, family advocacy is designed to be a proactive solution to eliminating or reducing abuse through 5 primary functions. Prevention and community awareness, such as participation in National Domestic Violence Prevention Month and Child Abuse Prevention Month activities, and educating the community through FAP training curriculum. Additional activities may occur year-round at the discretion of the installation leadership. Victim safety and support by providing FAP victim advocacy services to victims and conducting ongoing risk assessments. Offender treatment intervention with individual therapy and treatment groups to improve relationship and parenting skills and teaching alternative behaviors to violence. Offender accountability through collaboration with commands who are also accountable and written individual intervention strategies for alleged offenders. A consistent and appropriate response with results-oriented, trauma-informed, and evidence-supported interventions. The execution of these functions relies heavily upon the collaboration among coordinated community response team. It's important to note that family advocacy does not address disciplinary or punitive actions that offenders may be subject to under the Uniform Code of Military Justice and or civilian prosecution and does not direct command consequences. The family advocacy serves to implement strategies that prevent abuse from occurring. to provide safety and support to victims, and to offer the treatment options for the offenders. The Coordinated Community Response, or CCR, is a community-wide approach that includes medical, legal, investigative, security, chaplains, and the Fleet and Family Support Centers, and all our civilian resources. The primary goal of the CCR is to ensure a collaborative effort to prevent and intervene in cases of family distress and to promote a healthy family life. When it comes to preventing abuse, the entire community is the team. We have a role in preventing abuse, and the ultimate goal is that we work together so that families are healthy, the mission succeeds, and the children in our community feel safe and supported. That is a win for everyone. The diagram is an example of the CCR process, showing that each member has their own role and should easily collaborate with the Family Advocacy Program as the central agency of the CCR and other members of the CCR. The commands have the ability to issue military protective orders, or MPOs, to protect victims and from their abusers. The command is able to activate the Family Advocacy Command Assistant Team, or what is known as the FACAT, which is a Department of Defense special task force that supports local installation personnel in responding to allegations of child sexual abuse and Department of Defense sanctioned child care and youth activities. Command is also responsible for ensuring their personnel receives annual FAP training. The Naval Criminal Investigative Service, or NCIS, and law enforcement personnel establish and follow clear and consistent guidelines for responding to incidents, including prompt response, investigations of allegations, collection of evidence, and documentation and reporting. The medical treatment facilities whose personnel ensure and administer medical assessments and treatments to our victims. The chaplains provide pastoral and spiritual counseling to individuals and families involved with FAP. The Department of Defense Education Activity, the DODEA schools, and the Child and Youth Program, CYP, personnel also provide child care services and will report incidents of child abuse and neglect that are observed in their facilities. Local civilian organizations such as CPS, law enforcement, family courts, shelters provide much needed medical, legal, and counseling and advocacy services to our military families. Next slide, please. Within the installation, we also have a response team. These installation committees are responsible for preventing and responding to child abuse, neglect, and intimate partner violence. The Family Advocacy Committee, or the FAC, is an advisory board that addresses child abuse, neglect, and intimate partner violence at the institution level. The purpose of the FAC is in policy making and coordinating and advising installation leadership on abuse at the local level. High risk for violence and coordinated community response, or the HRV CCR team, provides a formalized and coordinated approach to monitoring and intervening in high-risk situations where there is a threat of immediate or serious harm. The purpose of the HRV CCR is to provide a coordinated community response in order to reduce child abuse, neglect, and intimate partner violence. The Incident Determination Committee, or IDC, is the administrative body that ensures consistent determinations of abuse are made. The purpose of the IDC is to determine whether the reported incident meets the Department of Defense criteria for abuse. The IDC members are responsible for using a computerized algorithm called the decision tree to vote on the three main criteria of abuse. These are act, impact, and exclusion. Once a final determination has been made regarding whether the incident meets the criteria for abuse, the chairperson will provide a letter containing the results of the active duty service member's command. The command shares that letter with the service member and informs the service member of the determination process. The clinical case staff meeting, or CCSM, is made up of the family advocacy case managers or counselors, the family advocacy representative, and will make treatment recommendations for those affected by abuse. The purpose of the CCSM is to provide oversight and collaboration among clinical providers on cases that meet criteria for abuse at the IDC. The CCSM members are limited to those with clinical expertise in child abuse and neglect and intimate partner violence. When the CCSM makes recommendations, the command will receive the initial recommendation in the form of a treatment letter, which details what the recommended treatment and actions are for minimizing safety risks, and to be used as communication with the service member. The notification letter and the commanding officer must provide acknowledgement of that they've received the letter, and they will either concur or non-concur with the treatment recommendations, and they must get a letter back to the FAP within 7 business days of that notification. The Family Advocacy Command Assist Team, or the FACAT, originated at the Department of Defense level and is activated by the command to assist at the installation level. The FACAT is comprised of specially trained and experienced individuals who are on call to provide advice and assistance on cases of child sexual abuse that involve multiple victims in Department of Defense sanctioned activities. Next slide, please. So I'd like to talk a little bit about reporting options. One of the main differences between military and the community response to intimate partner violence is the reporting options. While the Navy prefers that all persons affected by intimate partner violence report abuse, it recognizes that such mandatory reporting might prevent victims from seeking much needed medical care, counseling, or other victim services. Providing adult victims with an option that offers access to support services without immediate command or law enforcement involvement may help victims feel safer about reporting abuse. There are 2 reporting options that are available to adult victims of intimate partner violence. These are restricted reporting and unrestricted reporting. Unrestricted reporting allows the pursuit of official command or a criminal investigation of the alleged incident. This option supports effective command awareness, prevention programs, and administrative actions or legal consequences to hold offenders accountable, such as reduction in rank, orders of protection, or time in confinement or imprisonment. The unrestricted reporting is used when there is serious harm to a victim, or if, for example, an adult victim of IPV wants to report the abuse as a crime or receive command assistance. Restricted reporting, on the other hand, is an option repost that is only made to family advocacy, the family advocacy victim advocate, any medical or behavioral health provider, or the chaplains. This allows the adult victims to receive medical, advocacy, and counseling services without triggering an investigation by law enforcement or notifying the offenders of victims' command. The restricted reporting is appropriate if there's no serious harm or threat of harm to the victim. And if, for example, an adult victim of intimate partner violence wants to receive counseling for the abuse, but doesn't want the command notified. And so with that, I would like to open up for any questions that anyone may have. I don't see any questions.
So folks, just wanted to point out too, that for those of you who have been on Zoom all these months, you can either put them in the chat or in the Q&A. And there is one in the Q&A. And do you have any statistics on how many military protective orders are issued each year?
I do not have those statistics. I think you may, if you were going to find it, you may find that in the Department of Defense report on the child abuse, neglect, and domestic violence report that comes out every fiscal year.
Okay, great.
Yes.
This is actually Special Agent Robert Frasco with NCIS. I'm just going to kind of address that a little bit, just a little clarifying information regarding military protecting orders, if I may. Short version regarding MPOs is that there's a considerable distinction between MPOs and civilian restraining orders. Kind of goes to two parts. One is their applicability, and one is regarding specifically I suppose you would call it the level of proof or the burden required for implementing one. As far as applicability goes, military protective orders are essentially exactly what their name implies. They are orders from a commanding officer instructing an individual to not do something. That usually involves restraining contact, limitations on distance, may include also orders regarding possession of firearms and such things. From the Department of Defense standpoints, military protective orders are good tools for de-escalating situations and for, in a sense, providing breathing space. They're not really meant to serve the exact same purpose as a restraining order. A restraining order, of course, being a civilian order that requires usually a magistrate or judge's authorization with a certain level of a burden of proof involved, and is actually a civil action. For a military protective order, all is required is a commander's belief that issuing the order would be in the best order of good order and discipline, which is frankly no bar whatsoever. So unfortunately, I don't have specific numbers of MPOs issued. I would simply caution us from trying to use those as a proxy for the number of restraining orders issued by the military. The purpose is extremely different. Their applicability is very different, and we shouldn't treat them as synonymous.
Thank you so much, Robert Frasco. We'll be hearing more from him too, but appreciate your jumping into those questions. And so there is an update too. How do rates of domestic violence and intimate partner violence in non-military civilian populations in Guam compare to rates within military populations?
That's a good question. And I think I would have to refer to the Guam Coalition on the rates within the community here. Somebody wants to jump on board with that.
So we'll get that to you. I know we do have statistics from our Guam Police Department on those particular statistics recently shared with us for 2020 as well. But for the most part, because of COVID and this pandemic, we anticipate that there were far less reported the past year as in prior years. And I'm pretty sure that may be the case in any other jurisdiction as well. And certainly in prior conversations that I've had with key partners, the concerns though that were raised from cases that were brought up last year was that there were actually more intense or more severe cases that they really needed to seek additional, if not medical, at least police support, law enforcement support to assist families in that regard. We will have some stats posted up, but that's interesting to note. And we'll include that up on our website as well as a webinar handout. So thank you for that question too. And we will have additional statistics. And just a reminder, the slides that you see today from all of our partners, we will have that available and all other webinar materials on our website. And I have the team here who will be reminding you how to access that in that. So any other last words, Anne?
Just the next slide, please. Thank you for having us. And we are very appreciative of working with our community agencies out here in supporting the military and supporting family advocacy. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Anne. And I know Lori Napati with your office is also up there. giving you a moral support. We know Lori because she's very active with the coalition members, so she thought she could stay away from the camera, but we just want to acknowledge that she's in the room up there. I heard. I didn't see her this morning, but thank you so much to you both for.
She is here. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. We'll continue to collaborate on other activities as well. And I know we have another one from the Department of Defense who's joined us. So let me just get this situated because I understand you're also wanting the team, and I've got Taylor who's ready on board with your slides as well. But our next speaker is Robert Frasco, who's a special agent with the Naval Criminal Investigative Service since 2015, and is now one of the primary criminal investigators for NCIS on Guam. Much like what you see on TV, perhaps, this is NCIS local style, right? But before coming to the island, he served in various geographical areas, including Europe and the Southeast US. Special Agent Frasco has advanced training in family and sexual violence investigations and has supported the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force and is a certified child forensic interviewer. Special Agent Frasco is a graduate of Washington and Lee University in Lexington, Virginia, where he received a BA in Russian Studies, mine, and Collegium Civitas in Warsaw, Poland, where he received an MA in International Relations. Prior to joining NCIS, Special Agent Frasco worked as an analyst with the Department of the Navy and as a private investigator. So today we are fortunate to have you on with us. So here's Special Agent Frasco.
Absolutely. Cynthia, thank you so much for the invitation. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to speak with you all today. And you are 100% spot on. It is exactly like the television show in every way, shape, and form. And of course, we are just as good looking as Mark Harmon, as I always say. But in all reality, I have to say, it's my great fortune to be the presenter right after Ann Dodd, because she pretty much covers 90% of what I have to cover. So it allows my slide deck to be much, much shorter. I don't have to do all the fun discussions of statistics. Ann takes care of it for me. This isn't the first time NCIS has had to rely on the good graces of FAP, and I'm sure it won't be the last. So thank you very much, Ann, for setting the stage up perfectly. And so if we could just go forward on our first slide, we'll start off there. All right, so the Naval Criminal Investigative Service is what's referred to as a military criminal investigative organization. That's DoD speak for, well, an investigation service that works under the Department of Defense. We're one of several, with our primary sister partners being the Army Criminal Investigation Division, the Air Force Office of Special Investigation, and the Coast Guard Investigative Service. Together, we all work jointly and cooperatively, but we are separate investigations with investigative agencies, all with very different chains of commands, regulations, and operating procedures. Each service basically does its own way. One of the things that makes NCIS a little bit distinctive from some of our other partners within the DoD is that we are essentially a strictly civilian law enforcement agency. Virtually all agents operating under NCIS are what are referred to as 1811, GS 1811s, which are federal special agents, criminal investigators. That puts us in the same job series, for example, as FBI special agents. This is a benefit for our agency in the sense that it allows us much fewer limitations than some of our sister organizations in terms of what we are authorized to investigate in our jurisdiction. We consequently have full federal jurisdiction to investigate any violations of federal code that have any sort of Department of Defense nexus, in addition to being able to investigate strictly military offenses. NCIS is a global organization, as you can see here on our lovely map. Anywhere that the Navy or the Marine Corps is, you can trust that we are. My own career with NCIS has been throughout Europe, throughout the Southeast United States, and now on Guam. So in just a few short years, I've managed to span a good percentage of our geography, and yet I haven't even come close to going to each of our large geographical field offices. So like I said, wherever you can find a Marine or a sailor, NCIS either already is or can have someone there in very short order. Which is a big benefit for myself. It's a little bit more of a a difficulty for some of our folks who need to go out to Alaska on short notice. But with that being said, what is NCIS's mandate? We are the primary investigative organization responsible for major crimes, usually determined to be the felony level, for anything involving the Department of the Navy and the subordinate United States Navy and the Marine Corps. That affects both its civilian personnel and its military personnel. We enforce the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is the code of regulations and laws that all uniformed military members operate under. It is very similar in principle to most state laws in terms of what is actually covered, with additions for military specific offenses that really primarily revolve around good order and discipline. That distinction is important because although the laws are often very similar, the specificity of what is covered is not. For example, there are many things under the Uniform Code of Military Justice that are considered, would fall under a sexual assault, that in most civilian jurisdictions historically would not be considered a sexual assault. These things are often at the margins and specifics matter, but this is what dictates whether NCIS will often have coverage about it or whether it would be something that we have to report to our civilian counterparts out in town. And we'll get to a little bit more on jurisdiction in a moment. But broadly speaking, because of that ability we have as federal agents, pretty much anything that touches the Department of Defense or has a nexus to it, whether occurring on federal property or simply involving DoD interests, gives us an authorization to look into matters. Next slide, please. So I wanted to talk a little bit more specifically about our office here on Guam. This is NCIS Resident Agency Marianas. We are located aboard Naval Base Guam down at Big Navy. We have currently assigned 7 special agents, though these agents are spread throughout our entire mission set, which involve criminal special agents, those dedicated to major fraud investigations, as well as national security focused agents regarding force protection and counterintelligence. All special agents are considered jacks of all trades. We're expected to be competent or at least able to respond in every mission set. But obviously certain agents are more dedicated to certain mission sets in their specific position at any given time. However, I think I'm a pretty good example. I started off in my agency working adult, family, and sexual violence, moved on to counterintelligence in Europe for a few years, and am now moved back to our criminal element where I'm focusing, and I'll be for a good long while. Although this is more of a broader mission set now that I have than I had, for example, when I was in the Southeast. So our geographic jurisdiction on Guam is fairly broad because, as I'm sure everyone here is aware, the DoD and particularly the Department of the Navy's footprint on Guam is already fairly large, both in terms of geography and personnel, and is frankly only getting bigger. Anywhere that is under Navy control or soon to be under Marine control falls under NCIS's geographical jurisdiction, which means that anything that occurs on those property would be potentially a violation of federal law. That automatically gives us jurisdiction regardless of whoever the subject in question might be. We also have personal jurisdiction over all United States Navy and United States Marine Corps members. Our Air Force OSI counterparts would have similar jurisdiction over all active duty Air Force members on the island. So what does that mean? That means that regardless of where a crime occurs, it doesn't matter if it's out at a local bar in Tumon or on Navy housing, NCIS would have jurisdiction over a service member if a service member was committing that offense. Now, certainly that doesn't mean that we're going to try and step on any other agency, for example, Guam PD's toes in investigating things. We like to work collaboratively with our partners, but that simply means that we have jurisdiction over those members should we and GP decide that a military investigation would be more appropriate for even something that occurred out in town. So you can see that this kind of sets up a difficult series of questions that have to be asked at the onset to any report of information that NCIS might receive. For example, if we have an allegation of domestic violence that occurs out in town, let's say, at a Navy member who resides with their civilian spouse in a private residence out in town, Well, if there's an allegation of domestic violence in that household involving the military member as the subject, NCIS would have personal jurisdiction over that individual, which would mean that we would have the ability to investigate that allegation. Conversely, if the civilian spouse is the alleged offender, NCIS's ability to investigate that would, under most circumstances, be non-existent. We don't have no violation of federal crime would likely have occurred if it was out in Guam civilian jurisdiction, not on federal property. And if that civilian has no direct nexus to the military, NCIS would be unable to conduct a criminal investigation against that individual because no federal or UCMJ allegations have been made. Now, of course, as Anne has already laid out for us, that doesn't mean that it wouldn't come to the Navy and Command's attention. It would certainly be something that would be likely to be reported to FAP, and FAP would still have its role in determination and service provision. That simply means in that situation, Guam PD would have to be the investigative agency, as NCIS would be unable to do so if the offender was the civilian. Aside from covering Guam itself, my office is also responsible for the Navy and Marine Corps throughout CNMI and essentially most of Micronesia and a few other side areas around the periphery. So it's a very big geographical area. And with the military's realignment in the Pacific, we are frankly anticipating it growing even more. Next slide, please. Now, fortunately, NCIS being a reasonably large agency, we've got about, at this point, something like 800 special agents currently employed, and then probably about another times that of assisting personnel, whether they be intelligence analysts, support staff, administrative personnel, researchers, and various other additional assistants who are non-credentialed special agents assisting our agency. That allows us to bring a whole lot of resources to bear, at least, especially, beyond our local office. As far as our local baseline resources, our agents are all trained crime scene technicians in a certain sense, whereas most local, for example, law enforcement agencies would have specially trained technicians who operate that as their full-time position. NCIS special agents are dual-hatted as essentially our own crime scene technicians. It's a training and a competency that we're all expected to obtain and maintain so that we can respond even as a sole agent to a full complex crime scene. It's a daunting task, and it works better when we have multiple of us in any given location. But for example, when we have our aircraft carriers at sea, there's one agent who's assigned to that vessel. And whatever happens, whether it be an assault all the way through a homicide, that one agent is expected to be able to fully respond in a full trained crime scene elaborative way. It's a big challenge, but it's one that we're prepared to meet. Locally on island, we also have the ability to conduct some baseline digital forensics. We are very well plugged in with the both, of course, our Navy FAP community, but also with the Navy hospitals sexual assault forensic community as well. We also have, as I believe Cynthia mentioned, a forensic interviewing of children capability locally. Our real strength, though, goes out when you start talking about our agency globally. Once we start looking at our field office, which is based out of Singapore, but also some of our larger fleet regional offices, which would include, for example, Yokosuka, Japan, and Honolulu, Hawaii. Once we start bringing in those offices, we start talking about some truly impressive overall capabilities. We have experts in blood spatter analysis, digital crime scene reconstruction, ballistics, so firearms work, and enhanced digital forensics, truly astounding levels. We also have trained polygraphers throughout our office to be able to conduct lie detector examinations on persons of interest. We have a staff criminal psychologist and a threat management unit. We're able to bring full forces of experience and their psychiatric and psychological training to make determinations about threats posed by specific persons of interest who may be exhibiting some sort of psychological pathology in their behavior. We also have a very well-trained cadre of intelligence specialists and analysts who are able to provide us a meta look at crime scene trends, as well as support specific investigations with detailed research. And beyond that, as part of the Department of Defense military criminal apparatus, we're able to have access to Department of Defense crime and cyber laboratories in Georgia and Maryland that provide us with world-class forensic analysis. Going on. So I already kind of noted that things can be a little bit confusing when with the jurisdictional piece. And unfortunately, while we can't get around that, there's an easy option here. You're always free to call us to ask, hey, what should we do? Is this something NCIS should look at? But I can generally tell you that NCIS should definitely be contacted when you know that a military member is involved, either as a subject or a victim, in any sort of serious criminal activity, such as sexual assault, homicide, human trafficking, child abuse, child sexual abuse, child pornography, domestic violence involving aggravated assault, anything in that sort of vein, NCIS would like to be aware of. It does not necessarily mean that we will absolutely have jurisdiction over the matter. However, we would certainly like to be aware of it and be able to provide assistance where we can. Similarly, if there is a Department of Defense civilian who's involved in any of those types of serious criminal activity as a subject, that's something that we would like to be made aware of. Serious criminal activity has occurred or is occurring on any sort of DoD property, regardless of who the subject or victim are, would be vital information for us. And similarly, if a military nexus is unclear, it's just, we're not sure yet. It's possible that, it's Guam, it's a large military community. It's possible that there's a military involvement here, but investigative assistance and resources are needed before we can make that determination. NCIS is happy to help. We're more than happy to take a look and kind of make that determination. And even if it's not something that we can directly claim jurisdiction over, we're more than happy to bring our resources to bear in order to support our local partners. What I will say here in my big foot stomp is NCIS agents are not a substitute for 911 emergency first responders. While NCIS will endeavor, if you're notified of something, especially on a military installation, to respond as quickly as we can. Ultimately, the comparison of us is better to that of a detective. We respond after the patrol officers have secured the scene, have made an initial determination that investigative resources are required. We are not postured to respond in the same way that 911 is. We're not postured to provide medical assistance the way 911 is. So we are not by any means a substitute, but we are additional investigative resources provided when necessary and when able. We will, of course, work within our cooperation with our GPD partners. I will say that there are many times where GPD, just by virtue of the fact that either they're not aware of a military nexus or they're simply not aware. Sometimes you have junior folks who aren't particularly aware of how the military's criminal investigations work. Sometimes we're not normally, or excuse me, not immediately notified by GPD. So that being said, I'm always happy to get a phone call just to verify that we have been notified. There's certainly no risk or harm in that. Next slide, please. So this is our contact slide. We're pretty easy to get a hold of. We got a bunch of different numbers, and we also have a fancy dancy website with a little button that you can click to submit a tip. I will say that we're always happy to have visitors. If you have base access and can swing by our office, you're more than welcome to come to our office on Naval Base Guam, which is located right above the Bank of Guam. Easiest way to get a hold of us, though, is to call our office during business hours at the number there, 339-7220. You can also refer to the duty number after hours. That is a 24/7 manned number that we can respond to for any emergent situations or anything where our assistance is needed with prompt response. Like I said, that tip line is something that goes directly to our field office and will receive a response 100% of all times. So it's also a good way of getting a hold of us, either through anonymous or true name reporting. And with that, I think that's a really good summary of who we are, what we do, and hopefully how we can help. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. If anyone wants to throw anything up there, I've got both the chat and the Q&A open. Otherwise, I will just thank everyone for their time.
Special Agent Robert, just wanted to call your attention to the comment in the Q&A. Of course, amazing resources available through DoD via NCIS as well. The question is an inquiry on statistics on the number of cases reported, investigated, tried, and resulting in successful prosecution. Not that you can readily tell us what those statistics are. Perhaps would that be available, and that perhaps we can upload that to our website? So
there's a short and a long answer here. The short answer is there are those statistics. We do have them from our NCIS produces a yearly crime report for the Department of Defense, or excuse me, the Department of the Navy, and how our statistics look. And those, I think we can make those available to you all. That shouldn't be too difficult, Cynthia. I can get with you and we can make sure those are added later. The longer answer, I think, would be worth me addressing right here, is I can kind of go through this line by line, give it a little bit of context and additional information. So statistics on the number of case reports reported will be certainly in that document that I will be able to provide later. I will say our job is to provide unbiased fact-fighting to Navy commanders, Navy and Marine Corps commanders, in order to make prosecutorial decisions. Because in the military system, it's actually commanding officers and their chain of command upward that actually make prosecuting decisions. Certainly there is a trial shop with prosecutors who advise the commanding officers, but ultimately in the military system, good order and discipline is considered a commander's responsibility, and prosecutions, criminal offenses fall under the realm of good order and discipline. Have offenders for serial offenses been identified and published? Absolutely. I've done many of them myself. As far as the statistics for serial offenders, that becomes much harder to parse because simply identifying who is an actual serial offender can be a little bit more difficult. And sometimes the gravity of one's offenses and the veracity of a prior allegation don't really become readily apparent until the serial offenses have been identified. So I know that's a very vague answer. I wish I could be more specific. I could tell you that it absolutely does occur. To what frequency and specificity is a little bit more difficult to say, even if we come through the statistics. As far as the, I'm sorry, go ahead. Okay, I'll finish off with this question then. A curiosity was expressed regarding the number of offenders that have been held accountable and deterred. The thing I would highlight here is when we're talking about the United States military, we're talking about a community of millions of people. It is by no means a small community. It's the equivalent of a small to medium-sized state or an extremely large city. And I think our statistics have to be considered in that environment. I will tell you that in my experience, the military is somewhere, and this is just my personal pontification, the military lies somewhere in between a reasonably well-behaved city and a college community. It's kind of somewhere in between there. It depends, because we have all different age groups, but we also have a population that tends to skew young, a population that tends to skew towards being away from home from the first time in their life and behaving not terribly differently at times from the way most young people in their late teens, early 20s tend to behave when alone, aggregated close together with others, their same age group, away from home for the first time. When also provided access to small but not unsubstantial amounts of money. So I think you have to kind of take the military environment in that context. It's a very unique organization. It's a very unique community. In a lot of ways, we're kept free of some of the pathologies that our civilian world has to deal with. We don't have to deal with unemployment and poverty in the same way that our civilian community does, and the requisite effects that come from that. That's a blessing. That's a benefit for us. We also have a certain culture that on one side encourages brother and sisterhood and close collaboration. On the other hand, it also sometimes encourages machismo and bravado and aggressiveness. So you have to take the good and the bad with the military community. And I think all of our crime reportings, as you'll see, reflects that. And I hope I'm not speaking out of turn and that my FAP colleagues would think I'm not too far off the mark with what they see. But I think that's kind of the lens you have to view the military community through. With that, I'm happy to answer any other questions or comments that we might have.
I'm pretty sure we can certainly call on you to join us for another session, should that be with Anne as well. Certainly want to thank you so much, Special Agent Frasco, for joining us this morning and for even coming in to grace us with your presence in our training room. So yes, we look forward to the statistics, and we will certainly share that with all of our attendees as well, and have that as soon as we get it, we'll post that and upload it to our website. So without further ado, just want to say thank you to our partners with the Department of Defense for joining us, and appreciate your being a part of our webinar this morning, especially since we're all in the same time zone as well. Makes it easier that way, right? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now, thank you. So now, folks, we have quite a lineup still ready for you. So we wanted to be sure that we provide ample time as well for our next presenters who are also joining us. And first of all, I have an extensive bio for our next speaker, but I'm just going to read excerpts of it, and just wanted to point out that we haven't updated presenters' biographies of all of our panelists today, and that will be on our webinar that you'll be able to access. But for this individual who's coming on next, certainly want to acknowledge her and thank her for joining us. She is none other than the Acting Commissioner in the Administration on Native Americans with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Michelle Salve is an enrolled member of the St. Regis Mohawk tribe. She is the Acting Commissioner of the Administration for Native Americans, an agency within the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services that promotes self-sufficiency for Native Americans by providing discretionary grant funding or community-based projects that she'll be sharing more about. Under the authority of the Native American Programs Act, Acting Commissioner Salve oversees ANA's discretionary funding programs to American Indians, Alaska Natives, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders, serves as an advocate for Native Americans, and coordinates activities within the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So in addition, she also serves as in the dual role of the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Native American Affairs, affirming the government-to-government relationship between the Administration for Children and Families and Indian tribes. In addition to her roles as Acting Commissioner and Acting Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Native American Affairs, she serves as the Executive Director of the Secretary's Interdepartmental Council for Native Americans at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So as the Executive Director, she provides coordination across the department and supports the ANA Commissioner and the Council in cross-program collaborations and coordination on policy impacting Native Americans with Health and Human Services. Quite a read, quite extensive, but you know, rather than saying any more, I shall call on our Acting Commissioner, Michelle Salve, to please join us. And we appreciate your being here with us as I get your slides here situated for you.
Okay, half a day. Sego Skanagoga, that means do you have great peace? And Wakanu Horado, which means I send you great, my utmost respects to you that are joining us today. I am so delighted to be with you today and share resources from ANA, which I love that what it's called in the Pacific. So I wish I were there locally with all of you in Guam. Director Chone talked about the trip that our previous ANA commissioner got to take to Hawaii, Saipan, and to Guam. And I very unfortunately did not get to go with her. I did ensure I would go with her in 2020, and then COVID happened. So I've been here in DC wishing I were out in the Pacific, getting to meet all of you. But last week was wonderful, learning the history, more about the culture, seeing so many of the connections between our Indigenous communities was very, very special. And so I'm excited to talk to you today, not just about Anna, but about some of those other roles that I'm taking on right now as the commissioner and the acting deputy assistant secretary. So Cynthia, you could go to the next slide. So for those of you who don't know Anna, you did mention our service population, Cynthia, and we're here today joining you because we are very blessed to be able to provide resources to Native Hawaiians and Indigenous populations in the Pacific Basin, including American Samoa, Guam, and the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands. The discussion last week about the trend towards, self-determination, that really resonated so much because at ANA, our grant making is really focused on that inherent right for communities to determine their own destiny, that our Indigenous communities have traditional wisdom, traditional ways of knowing. And through that, we can sort of reclaim our histories and traditions and move that forward to the next 7 generations. And so, our funding provides for those community-based projects. We also do training and technical assistance. And I know the director for our ANA Pacific Training and TA Center is joining us as a participant today, Mr. Matt Ng. So thank you for being here with us, Matt. And they are really there to help guide applicants through the application process. They provide project planning and development training, pre-application assistance, and then once you are awarded an ANA grant, then help with training and technical assistance in the post-award process. So the other things I do want to talk to you a bit about is the advocacy and the policy development that we do both at the Administration for Children and Families and at HHS on behalf and with and in partnership with our Native American and Pacific Indigenous communities. I think you saw that those very many policies that our DoD representative shared at the beginning. And so I don't have a slide that goes through our policies, but I do want to share a little bit about the directions we've been heading in that area in the few minutes I have to talk to you today. And just location wise, the federal agency is the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Our division within that is the Administration for Children and Families. And then our little program office, ANA, is located situated way down deep in HHS. So you could go to the next slide. You heard that I'm also the executive director for the Secretary's Interdepartmental Council on Native American Affairs. And you can see we have here those HHS divisions. The first one listed on the right-hand side is that Administration for Children and Families, but these are all of our other partners. And, Catherine, Director Chon talked about how, we're really here to figure out how we can partner across the federal family within our departments, but also with our communities. And so these are some of the divisions that we look to partner with. And really that is inclusive of where these divisions and programs touch Pacific Islanders as well. It is not strictly focused on tribes in Alaska and the lower 48. And so we, through leadership of the ICNA, which is, the directors of the Centers for Disease Control, the director for Indian Health Service, the director for the National Institutes of Health, et cetera, all of the leadership of these different divisions come together and determine through listening sessions and roundtables we have with communities. If they have tribal consultations, we use that information as well. we also look to presidential and secretarial priorities and our larger HHS strategic plan to determine priority areas for us to focus on as a council. And so you can see on the left some of the priority areas we have been working on for the last 2 years. And that was really what brought our previous commissioner and Director Chon here to the Pacific to engage on some of these issues and to find out, from the local community, what does that look like? What we do know is we all have different histories, we have different perspectives, we have different environmental factors that are acting, within our communities that make some things, more of a pressing need than others. And so it's important that we take that very localized approach to resources and policies as they get rolled out. And so you could go to the next slide. So within the Administration for Children and Families, the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Native American Affairs works with similar colleagues that are leadership across ACF. And so I have been very honored to work closely with Director Chon in the Office of Trafficking in Persons on several initiatives that support the awareness and prevention of human trafficking in our Native American and Pacific Indigenous communities. Some of the projects we worked on in the past was for a Native and Pacific Indigenous specific awareness webinar that you can access, that anyone can access on a learning management system. And while there's a lot of different training on human trafficking, it's important to understand specific vulnerabilities that impact our Native communities. And so we used the ANA grantee community and our Pacific Islander grantees specifically to make sure that this webinar, that this resource would address those cultural specific factors that we want others to know about in terms of human trafficking awareness. So we really are grateful to the input that we were able to get on that resource through our ACF and ANA, our ANA grantee meetings, which is where we had those discussions about the resource. And so the other thing I do want to let you know about is we recently, through some of the input from the Pacific listening session in 2019, and many other listening sessions and consultations, developed an ACF framework it's a public health framework to address missing and murdered Native Americans. And that framework is really looking internally at ACF programs and those program offices and how they can help address this issue and prevent it, as well as how we can partner with communities and how communities can use ACF programs and resources to address those issues. And it's really focused on the 4 pillars that we heard about both last week at the coalition meeting and then earlier in the session today. The 4 pillars for the framework are culture, language, and tradition. That's the first framework to address the prevention. Economic mobility. The ambassador talked about how this morning how important economic mobility is can be to violence prevention. And then really taking a prevention approach, not just waiting for the events to occur, but to really look at healing, the social fabric in our societies. And I really appreciated what your historian Malia Ramirez had to share about, what she was able to witness during COVID in the parks and seeing those families spending time together. And, in those healthy ways, playing in the park, taking walks, my family, myself, we realized one of the silver linings is we have been able to have dinner together every night since March. So it's been more than a year. And that didn't happen before because, my husband has a long commute. And he would get home at 8:30, 9 o'clock in time to kind of tuck the kids into bed and then, help get them off to school the next day. But we've really been able to increase that quality time. And so while no one wishes a pandemic on anyone, it's a valuable learning opportunity to think about, what matters and how our ancestors spent their time. And that when we come back to normal, whatever that is, what do we want to change about the way that we used to do things? And so I think it's a wonderful opportunity to examine life as it was and life as we want it to be. And that's really the focus of ANA grants, really. Like, it's taking life as it is and creating projects for life as you want it to be. So you could go to the next slide. So a little bit more about our ANA funding. So we have 3 areas, and the first 2 are really the ones that primarily go to the Pacific, and that's our social and economic strategies and our language preservation. I have some slides where I'll talk a little bit more about that. Specifically in our statute, the environmental regulatory enhancement grants do state that they will go to tribal governments because they have the authority to do that environmental regulation on their land where they have that jurisdiction. So it's about writing different codes and enforcing those codes. And so I won't go into much detail about that. I do want to tell you that this year, right now, we have about 200 projects. Some of them have been continuing with previous year funding because they haven't been able to use their funding in the way they planned during the pandemic. So of that, we have 32 current projects that are in on a Pacific. It's in the Pacific Basin. So you can go to the next slide. So a little bit more about the social and economic development strategies funding. This is our broadest and most flexible type of projects. I like to think of, like, if you can dream it, it can be a SEDS project. I do want to mention briefly a couple special initiatives, or SEDS Alaska is not a special initiative, but it is something that we have in our regulations. So we went through a process, more than a decade ago to have the SEDS Alaska set aside for village-centered projects in Alaska. And if you're not as familiar with Alaska, they have some very, very rural, very isolated native villages that might have, 250, 400 people in the whole village. So they definitely have less capacity to apply for the SEDS funding. And so we have a small set aside for SEDS AK projects, and those are really for those village specific projects. And then through listening sessions of our previous commissioner, there was a request and a desire to build local, small organization capacity to apply for bigger projects and more different types of federal funding. So SEDS Growing Organization, or SEDS Go, is the initiative that came out of that. Last year, we launched that for the first time, and we are continuing that special funding opportunity this year as well. I do want to mention that today, any minute or any hour, sometime, hopefully soon, I'm going to get an email that says our funding opportunities are open. One of the things you have to do when you're the commissioner is you have to sign all of the funding opportunity announcements before they could be published. So I did that today. So I'm just waiting for the word that they're open and you can apply. The other change I wanted to let you know about is last year we had bonus points and they were called Native American Community Priority Areas. And so it was 5 bonus points for these type of projects. And so we have those bonus points again in the SEDS funding opportunity announcement, and they are for Native veterans. So I think it's very timely. We're talking about the DoD bases that are going to be increasing their presence. But last week we also talked about how you have community members that are either active or veterans, right? And so this is a good opportunity to include those Native veterans in your projects and think about how they can contribute to whatever it is you would like for the project to be. We're talking today about violence prevention. So how would you want to involve your Native veterans in violence prevention efforts, as an example? The other thing, the other program areas are emergency preparedness. And that can be, getting better prepared for natural disasters and potential emergencies, but also, pandemic emergencies or person-caused emergencies. And these can be not just for the government, but for organizations who have a need to engage in this preparedness planning. And the third area is the missing and murdered Native Americans. And so the descriptions for what you would need to do to write to those specific priority points will be in the funding opportunity announcement that I mentioned is going to be published any moment. And so we can go to the next slide. So I did want to let you know about one more change that is potentially a little less beneficial to our partners in the Pacific. And in December of 2020, there was a law passed and it affected several agencies, not just ANA, it also impacted the Department of Treasury, and Commerce and Department of Interior. And the ultimate goal was to improve economic development in tribal communities, in those reservation communities. And so what they have required of ANA is that our SEDS grants will prioritize certain types of economic development projects. And some examples of that would be tribal codes and court systems that would be more conducive to economic development, the development of Native community development financial institutions or CDFIs that does include Native Hawaiian CDFIs. And if an entity as a CDFI would qualify as a Native CDFI by the Department of Treasury, then you're eligible for that priority in the ANA SEDS funding. And so the other area is to establish master plans for community and economic development. And so that will receive 10 bonus points. And that is because in the changes to our legislation, it says that we will prioritize these types of projects within our ANA SEDS funding. So that is the way we are planning to prioritize that. And just for your general awareness, this year in FY21, we expect there to be a total of about $9 million for projects in the SEDS program area. All right, you can go to the next slide. Thank you. All right, so I wanted to mention our native language preservation and maintenance and our Esther Martinez immersion funding because last week listening, the culture and the language and the importance of that through your traditional healers, it is such a vital part of our identities as Indigenous people. And so that funding is available. It doesn't, kind of directly address the violence prevention. However, we do find that, knowledge of your culture and tradition, last week we heard about you really knowing your genealogy has really instilled a sense of pride for people after so much historical and recent trauma. And so it can be, one of those protective factors that can help address adverse childhood experiences and other negative influences. So I did want to leave that as part of this presentation, You can go to the next slide. And the main difference, oh, okay, this one's next. So we got a surprise with the American Rescue Plan funding this year. And when I first saw the legislation in draft, it was going to give us $10 million for an emergency language funding. And that is because really our communities have been devastated through the loss of fluent speakers, some of our last remaining first language speakers, because they have been most prone, to die from COVID-19. Their age and their, we learned very quickly with what was happening in the nursing homes that, it was going to have a grave impact, and that just became, very, very true and evident. And so this funding was included, I believe, in the American Rescue Plan package because while it's great to have a 3-year project from ANA, that funding is competitive. And you might have to wait and apply several times before you actually receive that language funding. And with elders and fluent speakers dying from this disease, it is no longer, oh, let's wait and see next year if we get the funding. It is an emergency. And so we're very thankful to be able to provide this funding to communities. We've had listening sessions and consultation. And so we will be making decisions for the allocation of those fundings very soon. Congress did say we had to provide this funding within 180 days. I believe the law was passed March 11th. So, we're already a month in. So we're definitely eager to get that funding out as much so as the communities are anxious to receive that funding and to do what they can to preserve and maintain their languages. So you can go to the next slide. So the other part of language funding we have is our Esther Martinez immersion. And some good news for this is that in 2019, it was reauthorized. And some of the changes are, it used to be we could provide this funding for 3 years. And no less than 3 years and no more than 3 years. And so the amendment that Congress made for this was funding for up to 5 years of language immersion instruction. I think that is valuable because, once again, there's not one size fits all, and some projects may be able to be completed in less than 3 years, and some would really benefit from that 5 years of funding. So we now have that ability. And so if you are looking at funding for immersion programs, it does still have to include at least 500 hours of instruction in the language, but it can include fewer participants per age group and can be for up to 5 years. So you can go to the next slide. So last but not least, the training and technical assistance. I told you a little bit about our project planning and development trainings. That's where you can really dig in deep on your idea and kind of workshop that with our amazing training and technical assistance providers. They take a look at, what assets you have in your community. With you bring those assets to the table, and then and your ideas, and you work together to create those project plans. What the scope of the project would be, what the objectives would be, how long it would take. Kind of walk through all of those things, and so you're really ready when our application comes out, and you can use those the trainings, both the pre-app and the project planning for most federal competitions. that we're pretty similar in terms of the type of information and the type of preparation we expect. So I think it's valuable information, even if you're thinking, if you're not quite ready to apply for one of our grants, but you're eligible, then we encourage you to reach out. And so the Pacific TA Center is the fourth one. I wanted to include the other ones because we do fund some Pacific Indigenous serving organizations that are in the lower 48. And so they might reach out to ANA Eastern or ANA Western to get their training and technical assistance needs because it's more in their time zone and more local. And then similarly, we know that there is a sizable Pacific Indigenous community in Alaska. So especially from American Samoa, I believe. So that's there too, in case there are those, nonprofits that are Native nonprofits and are looking to serve the Pacific Indigenous communities in other parts of our service areas. So you can go to the next slide. All right, so that is the presentation for today. I once again want to thank you so much for inviting Anna to be here. I've learned so much. I cannot wait to come and visit when travel restrictions are lifted. And I couldn't get my beach background to work, so imagine that is behind me because I was there with you. Thank you.
Certainly, thank you so much for joining us. And, instead of having a beach virtual background, plan on having that as your real background when you come visit in your next trip out this way. And we're hearing that our governor is looking at relaxing our quarantine regulations, so something to look forward to. So at least you'll be able to enjoy Guam when you do visit much longer in that regard. So thank you so much to our presenter and appreciate, and yes, we will be sharing her slides as well on our website. Just wanted to point out, folks, that I made a very big mistake by not letting you know that we will probably be extending till 11 o'clock Guam time to be able to hear the information. And actually just as much of what they're sharing is just the tip of the iceberg. It is to pique your interest, of course, in the different resources that we have available out there. So oftentimes, especially for grants, it's like, well, where do you start? Well, this was our webinar. This is someplace to start. And then too, we have others in the wings also waiting to be on. And so we plan on staying on till 11 a.m. Guam time. And so that's 9 p.m. to you Easterners. So we appreciate your staying up with us and want to provide you with the information so you're not thinking that we are just so time focused. Yes, we are. And at this point, just wanted to do a quick break because we've been receiving a lot of extensive information. And so just wanted to use this opportunity as well to say thank you to you see Kanai here, he's our ASL interpreter, but also our team here with the Guam Coalition. So kudos to my team. So if there's anything, they're the ones who help behind the scenes. There's also Dwayne, who's handling our training room upstairs. And then in the background also is Taylor, who's supporting by providing answers to the questions that you may have in the chat. And here in the office, supporting me also and letting me know who's up next and reminding me about other calls and other things that I need to be mindful of. We've got Marie, Nate, and Samantha manning the fort here in the office. So that's the team, so kudos to them. But if there are any questions, any problems, or any issues, that's my department. That's on me, so please be sure you post that in the chat. If there's any other concerns you may have, let me know or email us in that light. So without further ado, just wanted to give you a prelude to our next presenter, and that's Jane Segerbrick. So thank you so much for joining us. She is the Strategic Initiatives Lead for the Health Resources and Services Administration, or HRSA, with the Office of Women's Health. And that is also with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So as a trained prevention specialist, she designs, implements, and evaluates programs in women's health priority areas of violence prevention and response, access to preventive services, and health system strengthening across HRSA programs. Current efforts include interagency coordination for a state-level initiative to integrate screening and counseling for intimate partner violence and human trafficking in safety net settings of care, interagency coordination for the cervical cancer moonshot, and sustainability for the HRSA strategy to address intimate partner violence. Prior to her current role, she served as a project officer in HRSA's Office of Quality Improvement and worked in consulting and project management for Cerner, with a focus on hospital and ambulatory-based clinical decision support, health information exchange, interoperability, and patient engagement. She holds a master's degree in public health from Emory University, but more important, she is here with us today. And thank you so much for joining us, Jane. And I've got Taylor, who will be handling your slides for you. So you're up.
Great. Thank you so much, Cynthia. I really appreciate it. And I'm just thrilled to be able to be here today. It's such a privilege and an honor. And good morning to all of my colleagues throughout the Pacific Rim. I have been truly inspired by the last several days of sessions, and just really looking forward to taking what we are learning from this incredible array of speakers into our work. So my name is Jane Segerbrecht. I lead strategic initiatives for the Health Resources and Services Administration, Office of Women's Health. And for my talk today, whether you come from a clinical or programmatic or policy perspective, I hope that some of the resources and approaches to my office's work will leave you with new ideas, innovations, and then practical solutions to bring to your efforts in violence prevention and response. So the next slide. So before we dig into our violence prevention efforts, just a bit about HRSA. HRSA is an agency within the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and we support more than 90 programs providing healthcare to people who are geographically isolated, economically, or medically challenged. And our agency does this through grants and cooperative agreements, and this is to community and faith-based organizations, colleges and universities, hospitals, state, local, and tribal governments. And every year, HRSA programs serve tens of millions of people, including people living with HIV/AIDS, pregnant women, mothers and their families, and those unable to access quality health care. And some of you may be working directly with some of our programs right now or interface with the programs. Some of them that may ring a bell to you can include the Ryan White HIV/AIDS program, the Maternal and Child Health Block Grant, the Maternal, Infant, and Early Childhood Home Visiting Program, the National Service Corps, Nurse Corps, and also the Health Center Program. And on the next slide, the Health Center Program is really one of our key collaborating partners in addressing violence. This program includes nearly 1,400 funded health centers, which operate roughly 12,000 service delivery sites across every US state and territory. And the program's reach is truly extensive. We serve 1 in 12 people nationwide, including 1 in 9 children, 1 in 5 rural residents, and 1 in 3 living in poverty, and also more than 385,000 veterans. On the next slide. All right. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, health services worldwide are going through important adaptations, and HRSA fully recognizes the extraordinary ways in which this public health emergency is disrupting our normal health center workflows and care delivery. And we've been responding with many different levers. In addition to a provider relief fund, we've made over $2 billion of investments in the health center program to help health centers respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. And these investments include supporting health centers to expand their screening and testing needs, acquiring medical supplies and PPE, supporting vaccination, and also boosting telehealth capacity. And as has been mentioned a few times tonight, on the violence prevention front, we recognize and we're still learning the ways that multiple forms of violence have shifted during COVID-19. But we do know that emergencies exacerbate violence and increase vulnerability and risks. Next slide. So my office, the HRSA Office of Women's Health, leads women's health related activities across HRSA programs that provide healthcare to women and girls who are geographically isolated or economically vulnerable. And according to the US Department of Labor, women make approximately 80% of the healthcare decisions for their families. So in our work to support the health, wellness, and safety of women across the lifespan, we know that we're supporting the women served by HRSA's programs, their families, and also the communities in which they live. So on the next slide, you'll see we have 3 priority areas, and all of these certainly intersect with one another. We have a focus on addressing the opioid crisis for women, addressing maternal mortality, and then also supporting violence prevention, particularly domestic violence, interpersonal violence, and intimate partner violence, which you'll hear me refer to as IPV. So on the next slide, our office, HRSA Office of Women's Health, was successful in generating our agency's commitments to address IPV by demonstrating its prevalence. And this is dated prevalence data. It's actually 1 in 3 women, according to the most recent NISPAS data. And in addition to demonstrating the prevalence, we demonstrated the way that IPV disproportionately affects many of the specific populations and communities that HRSA serves, such as pregnant women, adolescents, racial and ethnic minorities, persons living with HIV and AIDS, LGBTQ individuals, individuals living with disabilities, individuals with substance use disorders, and also individuals in rural areas. So on the next slide, we were able to generate interest in this area also within the agency by demonstrating the public health evidence for the role IPV can play on health outcomes. Health and IPV is linked on many different levels, and the experience of IPV has considerable impact on health. It's associated with many health outcomes, including suicidal ideation, cardiovascular disease, asthma, depression, chronic pain, and HIV and AIDS, just to name a few. And for HRSA, looking at IPV in the context of health and healthcare gives us a really unique opportunity to address IPV. And we often cite that women who talk with their healthcare provider about abuse are 4 times more likely to use an intervention recommended by their provider. But we know that survivors may not discuss abuse with their healthcare providers for a variety of reasons. This could be shame or fear of retaliation or concerns that the justice system might become involved. And we know that for many survivors, the abuse itself can keep them from accessing medical care. And on the other side, healthcare providers may cite several factors for not asking about IPV during patient encounters. This could be absence of a clear protocol for screening practices or universal education, lack of time, low self-efficacy, discomfort with the topic, or lack of knowledge. So because of these issues, my office, the HRSA Office of Women's Health, has supported initiatives to support our HRSA-supported health centers and other healthcare settings with the tools that they need to address intimate partner violence. So on the next slide, I just want to dig into one of our primary efforts to address violence. And this is a cross-sector collaborative approach to training professionals with recurring contact to individuals at risk for IPV and human trafficking. And we call this effort Project Catalyst. It's a partnership between the HRSA Office of Women's Health, the HRSA Bureau of Primary Health Care, which administers the Community Health Center program, and also the ACF Family Violence Prevention Services, or FIPSA program. And my colleague who works with me on this effort, Kenya Fairley, is in the audience today with us. And so in Project Catalyst, leadership teams participate in an online learning collaborative, and they participate in a training of the trainer model to equip them to train health centers and domestic violence advocacy organizations themselves. And the leadership teams consist of primary care associations, state domestic violence coalitions, and also state departments of health. The leadership teams, after becoming trainers themselves, conduct trainings with community health centers and domestic violence programs, and then they also in turn promote state and territory level policy systems change for health centers and domestic violence service providers so that the states can sustain the work. And we are now in our 3rd phase of this work, and the Guam leadership team which was led by Cynthia Cabot and the Hawaii Primary Care Association and the Guam Department of Public Health and Social Services, were a key contributing partner to Project Catalyst as leadership team members. And they expanded their efforts, their training efforts beyond the original project aim, and introduced novel approaches, which I'll dig into what those approaches are. But they introduced novel approaches to support domestic violence and human trafficking response in American Samoa, the Federated States of Micronesia, specifically Pohnpei, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, specifically Saipan. And along with their expansion in their scope to Guam and throughout the Pacific Rim, the leadership team also worked to ensure that all patient-facing materials were translated and culturally tailored for local settings. So on the next slide, you'll see the aim of Project Catalyst. It really is to support partnerships to reduce isolation and improve patient safety and health outcomes. And the interventions to do this work are often remarkably simple. This could be building a formal memorandum of understanding, support a partnership with domestic violence programs and community health centers, creating confidential spaces where all patients are seen alone for a portion of every visit, making sure that interpreters, if they're needed, are not known to the patients, and then also offering warm and supportive messaging to patients. And this all supports making warm and supportive referrals between domestic violence advocacy partners and the community health center partner. So on the next slide, you'll see our goal for this effort is the incorporation of an evidence-based safety card intervention called CUES. And the acronym stands for confidentiality, universal education, empower, and support. And some patients will not be comfortable honestly answering the question, are you experiencing domestic violence? We spoke last week about how traditional healers hear lots of things from the individuals that they're treating, but it can take time and trust before everything is shared. And so we really encourage all providers to share what we call a safety card with every patient. And the card contains general information on healthy relationships, domestic violence, and it asks questions that can help move towards that trust. So questions like, is my partner respectful of my choices? Are there ever times my partner hurts me with their words or their actions? Are there ever times my partner keeps me from seeing my doctor or taking my medicine? And the safety card has a script inside, which providers can use as a guide for discussing healthy relationships. And then on the back is a number for the National Domestic Violence Hotline, or you can also add your local domestic violence program. And this way survivors can seek additional support on their terms when they're ready. And we know that leaving a relationship may not always be the safest option or what the survivor wants. So the hotline and domestic violence advocacy organizations are equipped to help with safety planning. And just as an aside, Kenya Fairley and I are working together between our offices on an initiative to support advocates in staffing the national hotline, who staff the national hotline to make connections to health centers. So that way, anyone who contacts the national hotline will be able to be referred to a health center if needed. And these cards can be downloaded and ordered from Fusion Without Violence, and they're available in a variety of cultural adaptations and languages. So we can share the link when I'm done to that page. So on the next slide, in this work, we uplift the comprehensive range of domestic violence program offerings to healthcare providers. And we recognize that providers are not always confident about what transpires on the advocacy side of their referrals. And by sharing this information and through our trainings, having advocates and providers together at the same time during the training, they gain more confidence in making bidirectional referrals or referrals to advocacy for their patients. So on the next slide, just a few outcomes of Project Catalyst from our first 2 years. And again, we're now in our third year. In the first 2 years, over 1,200 providers were trained. And these are providers from health centers and domestic violence advocacy providers as well. And over 54 formal memorandum of understanding were established to demonstrate partnerships between domestic violence service providers and health centers. 100% of the health centers who participated implemented new policies to see patients alone and supported trauma-informed practices for intimate partner violence and human trafficking screening. And 100% of the leadership teams who trained the CHCs and the domestic violence programs sustained the training and policies and practices beyond the period of performance. And then also just really exciting, we saw a 70% increase in the bidirectional referrals between health centers and domestic violence service providers. So next slide. All of these steps to conduct the initiatives have been distilled by Futures Without Violence onto a beautiful online toolkit. And you and your stakeholders can use this toolkit and share it. It's at the website ipvhealthpartners.org. And it's a comprehensive resource that includes all the steps for Project Catalyst so that healthcare settings can formally partner with domestic violence advocacy programs. They can prepare their staff and the healthcare setting to do this work. They can adopt the safety card intervention, train all providers, and also evaluate and sustain progress. So on the next slide, we have, after the conclusion, well, actually we're in our third year, but we've actually started to think about sustainability going forward for Project Catalyst. And we have scaled the models in the Catalyst effort to a national level, now available to all nearly 13,000 community health center sites. And this is through a new technical assistance center called the National Health Network on IPV and Human Trafficking. And this kicked off on July 1st, 2020, and Futures Without Violence is operating this new TA center, and it's funded by our Bureau of Primary Healthcare, which administers the Community Health Center program. And the National Health Network will work with health centers and systems to support those who are at risk of experiencing or surviving intimate partner violence and human trafficking, and also work to bolster prevention efforts. So I've shared the announcements page here and given you just an example of some recent webinar topics and some upcoming learning collaboratives that you can join. These are all free offerings and the webinars are all archived, but you do need to register for the upcoming learning collaborative. So when you download and access the slides later, I encourage you to look at the announcements page. So now on the next slide, shifting to another Office of Women's Health effort, the HRSA strategy to address IPV is my agency's framework for how HRSA addresses intimate partner violence through programs and partnerships. And I thought this group may appreciate seeing the strategy today, as it could be a model for how you can generate commitments in your various organizations to address various forms of violence. And the strategy is about 50 pages long, so I'm only going to walk you briefly through its organization. But if you're curious, there's a link here at the bottom of the slide where you can download it in its entirety. So on the next slide, our office worked with leadership from across HRSA to create the formal strategy to ensure that we address domestic violence as an agency in a comprehensive manner. And to develop the strategy, we held 6 working summits. And this is where HRSA leadership came together to bring their creativity to approaches to address domestic violence. And together they created our agency's vision for addressing domestic violence, which is a world free from intimate partner violence, where engaged healthcare systems ensure access to high quality health services and coordinated care for all. So with that North Star on the next slide, we developed 4 different overarching priorities. And within these overarching priorities, there are 27 collaborative activities that have been implemented throughout HRSA. And I think it's actually closer to within those 27 of around 65 different actions. And so we're really proud that we have realized success on all of these activities and achieved them throughout all of our different bureaus and offices. So priority 1 focuses on training healthcare providers and the public health workforce to address intimate partner violence at both community and health systems levels. So for example, within this, visitors from international visitors to HRSA from the State Department's International Visitor Leadership Program now have an option to elect to learn about how the United States and specifically HRSA is addressing IPV as a topic area. So for example, we recently did a briefing for visitors from the Kyrgyz Republic in response to this strategy activity. The second priority is building capacity to respond to IPV by developing partnerships to raise awareness. And this is both within HRSA and across our department. So for example, under this priority, our Office of Regional Operations has supported dissemination and promotion of ACF Office of Trafficking in Persons SOAR training curricula. And this is to make sure that providers in HRSA supported settings of care can take note of the red flags and warning signs of human trafficking, and also that they have the support and plans in place to respond. Priority 3 emphasizes increasing access to healthcare services that address IPV by working with stakeholders external to HRSA to serve all populations. And so Project Catalyst actually falls under this priority. And then lastly, our final priority is addressing gaps in knowledge to strengthen evidence in terms of the risks for IPV, how it impacts specific populations, and informs interventions. So for example, under this priority, our HIV/AIDS Bureau funded a new center that is evaluating how interventions to address trauma for persons living with HIV and AIDS impact health outcomes, viral suppression rates, and also retention and care. So to see our 27 different actions, you can download the strategy at the link provided in the slides. So also, because I noticed that I was one of the only DHHS folks on for doing a formal presentation, I also wanted to share some links for other federal violence prevention and response efforts throughout the department. And these are all resources that we point to on a regular basis. I'm on the next slide, you can switch that. And so definitely encourage you to explore these later. CDC NISFIS is a national level data set, and there's updated data, more up to date than the data I shared earlier. Stop IPV includes different, or the Preventing IPV technical package includes different technical packages for preventing IPV and sexual assault and other forms of violence. And then also veto violence. And then within the Administration for Children and Families, we've shared a few different programs here from the Family Violence Prevention Services Office, or FIPSA, and also our colleagues' resources from ACF Office of Trafficking in Persons. And I do want to call attention to a new resource that you may not have seen yet, but is starting to get lots of circulation, is the core competencies for anti-trafficking response in healthcare and behavioral health systems. And this tool was designed with a organizational audience, so organizational audience in mind. So you'll probably be able to find the content relevant no matter your sector. And then I will also add into the chat just a link on HRSA's violence prevention resources. This is a newsletter that includes just a lot of these different resources. So if you want to revisit any of them later, you'll have them at your fingertips there. So that is all that I have. If you go to the next slide, you'll see my contact information. And please reach out at any time. We always, as an office, love to collaborate with our partners throughout the federal government and our non-federal stakeholders as well. And then on the next slide, you'll see information to engage with HRSA and subscribe to our various newsletters. So thank you so much, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Jane, for joining us your evening, our morning, and certainly for sharing all of the other additional resources such as CDC and veto violence. And actually, we're very familiar with many of those, so it's great to have them up on the slide again. And folks, we will certainly have Jane's presentation posted on our website for additional information. And for those of you who are interested, we do have a handful though, of the palm cards that we had when we were actively involved with Project Catalyst. So thank you for calling that to mind again. And that's how we continue to reach out and network to the region as well. And I know, unlike other jurisdictions, the community health centers here in Guam actually fall under our local Guam Department of Health, of Public Health and Social Services. And I know COVID's been the priority area, since last year. So all hands on deck with that. But we certainly continue to work closely with them. So appreciate your calling that out as well. So if there are any other questions in the panel, there's a question there. I think it may be to you. Do you have any recommended assessments for survivors and offenders?
All of our various resources that we have are on the ipvhealthpartners.org site, all of the various curricula. But the Domestic Violence Resource Network within the FIPSA office has a slew of different assessments and resources for survivors and offenders. And I can add the link in there, or my colleague Kenya, that's her program office. She can add that in the link as well. So one of us will get that as a resource to you.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you for extending your evening again to be with us, Jane.
Thank
We
you so
certainly
much.
look forward to having you again, and we'll be in touch. So thank you. And I
Thank
know
you so
we've
much.
got our thanks. We've got our other presenters, and just appreciate everyone for sticking around with us as well. So next up in line, we've got. Let me just make sure I've got this right. Okay, we've got Jessica Walls. She's a senior manager for learning experiences at the Child Welfare Capacity Building Collaborative Center for States. Jessica leads the development of publications, tools, and digital products designed to build the capacity of child welfare agencies to realize better outcomes for children and families. With a background in adult learning and instructional design, she specializes in the development of blended learning strategies that integrate storytelling, reflection, collaborative learning, and application activities, and certainly very much consistent with how we do our oral histories in our culture, right? So thank you so much, Jessica, for joining us. And let me just give me a quick moment as I get your slides situated. So welcome, Jessica.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. I am honored to join all of you guys, whether I'm saying good evening or good morning to you. I'm honored to be with you from Atlanta, Georgia, and a quick shout out to Cynthia and your team. I mean, this has just gone really seamlessly. So these may not be my slides.
Wrong one.
We'll roll with it.
Just what it said, we're going really well, right?
Exactly. I think I did that to you actually by saying that. But I really am honored to be with you guys to share a little bit about the services and resources that are available through the Capacity Building Center, which I'm just going to call the center, to support you and your partners. And I'm just going to say, don't worry, you don't have to remember everything that I'm going to share with you today. We'll talk more later about how you can reach out to us with questions and discover more resources, because I know you've heard a lot about resources that are available to support you. And so we would be happy to be considered in that group. So if we can go to the next slide. For a bit of context, the purpose of the center is really to help agencies build their capacities to improve child welfare practice. And we provide support to that aim in a lot of different ways. So we have on the ground tailored services where we're working shoulder to shoulder with agencies around initiatives. But we also have a lot of on-demand support, which I know that folks have gotten really comfortable with in this year as we've responded to the pandemic. And these include digital resources like videos and podcasts. We're big believers in storytelling and the power of learning from your peers. We have a number of e-learning resources, training curriculums, publications, and we also offer a series of virtual events and peer groups where you can connect and hear about what other agencies are doing to address topics of interest, whatever those may be. We are an extension of the support provided by the Children's Bureau, which falls within the Administration for Children and Families. And so today I am going to highlight a few of the resources that we have available, but let's start with our website. So if we can go to the next slide. So we do offer a website. It's easily accessed from it's capacity.childwelfare.gov, and I'll give that link to you later as well. And you can think about this as the one-stop shop for all of our resources available through the center. From this main page, you have a couple of options to do quick and easy things. You can use our search feature to search for resources by keywords. We have a navigation menu that lets you search by key topic. And on our main page, you can always see what is the latest and greatest, what's just hit the field. You can also, from any page within our website, share resources with your friends and colleagues. So if you find something that's interested or connected to work that others might be doing, you can easily share that using what's shown on the left-hand side here. And you can also join our distribution list. So we do a couple of regular newsletters that feature upcoming resources, let you know what events are happening. And we also curate resources related to child welfare topics on a monthly basis called our Spotlight On. So if we can go forward one slide, I know that we have talked a lot about domestic violence prevention, and I did want to draw your attention to a couple of different resources available through the center. The first on the left-hand side is a couple of excerpts from our Domestic Violence and Child Welfare Professional series. This series provides tips to support caseworkers responding to families experiencing domestic violence and child maltreatment, and really looks at addressing the intersection between domestic violence and child welfare, including agency recognition of the overlap and current research and relevant definitions. So really helps set the baseline. The series consists of 6 tip sheets that offer foundational information for general practices, assessment documentation, and decision-making, and can be used as a support to individuals or teams looking to build their general capacity in this area. The other is the Child Protection and Families Experiencing Domestic Violence Manual. So this was updated in 2018, and the second edition discusses, again, the intersection of child maltreatment and domestic violence with a real focus on child protection practice and how those can be integrated. If we go to the next slide, we also wanted to make sure that you knew about a few of our resources dedicated to child welfare response to child and youth sex trafficking. So with the release of the previous initiative around anti-trafficking provisions, we have a number of resources related to this topic that folks continue to use even after the initial implementation period of this piece of legislation. And so these resources can really help, again, build capacity to address child and youth sex trafficking. And they include a couple of archived webinars that feature subject matter experts and youth with lived expertise, and a 3-part learning experience that blends together videos providing agency perspectives, a series of survivor stories, and activities that can be used to build the capacity of agencies and teams. And then if we go to the next slide, finally, I just wanted to highlight a couple of resources that we have related to family and youth engagement. And while these may not seem directly connected to violence prevention and response, authentic engagement we have found, which I'm sure you have found as well, where we can create safe and trusting spaces where folks are feel comfortable sharing details of what they're experiencing and what they need, can really be the key to helping our communities get the services that they need when they need them. And we have a number of resources in this area that range from visuals like infographics to videos that model effective engagement behaviors to publications that include tips and strategies that teams can use to support their work around authentic engagement. So if we go to the next slide, as I promised, I am going to encourage you to stay connected with us. We would love to let you know about what's happening at the center, whether that be an event or new resources that are about to hit the field. While I did cover some resources related to violence prevention and addressing sex trafficking and engagement, we have a number of resources related to other topics of interest as you work to support families and youth and children in your communities. And the last slide is just a bit of contact information. I would encourage you after today, if you have questions, so on the next slide, if you have questions, you have a couple of methods to reach out to us. You can hunt around on our website for any resources, send us an email, or chat with us by phone. We also have just launched a live chat feature, which is available on our website. You can always let us know if you need support. And again, so honored to be with you today, and look forward to hearing more about the great work that you're all doing. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, Jessica, for joining us, and for staying up later than usual to share the information all the way from Atlanta. So I appreciate your being virtually here with us in our morning. Being that we're your tomorrow, just to let you know that it started out with a great sunny day. So may that be your tomorrow as well. So on this note, then we just want to, let me see, get ready for our next presenter for you, who's been patiently waiting in the wings. So we appreciate your being with us, and that's going to be Elizabeth Lang. She is, as she gets ready here on board, she's a skilled practitioner and researcher in the field of human trafficking. She currently serves as a project analyst for the Human Trafficking Capacity Building Center. Ms. Lang advises victim service providers on how to start, sustain, or grow their organization's anti-trafficking work. So certainly much information for us. And prior to joining the Human Trafficking Capacity Building Center, she served as a program officer for the Trafficking Victim Assistance Program. In this role, she served as the first point of contact for more than 75 organizations across 16 states. And as a trainer and technical assistance provider, she developed, planned, and executed webinars in a variety of human trafficking topics. So she knows very well what we're doing and what it takes to pull an information like this together. And just wanted to share that she earned her master's degree in international peace and conflict resolution with a concentration in human rights from American University School of International Service and a BA from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. She has a master's degree in international peace and conflict. Oh, there, I mentioned it again. And so, you know, that must be Jessica passing on to say, because I know I thought you were up first, but here are your slides, I believe, and you'll be handling it from there. So appreciate your being on and joining us. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Of course, and can everyone see my slide deck?
Yes.
Awesome, wonderful. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. I just want to take that opportunity to tell you all about the Human Trafficking Capacity Building Center and the work that we do, how we do it, and how you might tap into the free assistance that we offer organizations. So the center, which we call ourselves for short, knowing that our name is rather a mouthful, we're funded by the Office for Victims of Crime. And so all of our services that I'm going to speak about today come at no cost to organizations, tribes, coalitions, or anyone who's working to start, sustain, or grow their anti-trafficking programs. We are a coaching and development hub. So we see that as training and technical assistance, but a little bit more curated to the needs of an organization, and as well as a partnership between us and the organization that we work with to reach their missions and goals. We work with organizations and tribes in 3 ways, which I'll go into more detail about, but that is building capacity to serve all survivors of trafficking, navigating resources, and strengthening human trafficking networks in their community. So in order to achieve these goals, the center works through a combination of a few different methods. First, we maintain a clearinghouse repository of resources and documents to help you meet your needs. So I really invite you all to go to our website, which I'll link to later, and look at our resource library, which we're constantly adding more center developed tools to, as well as tools developed by other organizations as well, to keep it all in one place so you can easily navigate those resources. We work with organizations as well to directly, through direct services, to identify challenges and curate a response to overcome those challenges. This includes utilizing a multidisciplinary team to partner with your organization to identify goals and implement strategies to meet those goals. And finally, we also conduct proactive outreach, really focused on areas with little or no OVC funding, but we do serve the entire United States and territories to help these communities build their capacity to serve all survivors of trafficking. I encourage you to check out our website, which reviews the list of services that we offer, as well as our resource library, as I mentioned before, which has a wide variety of content related to human trafficking. So to go into a little bit more detail as to the resources that we have available on that, especially in the resource library, we focus in three main areas. We have overview documents on topics such as funding opportunities, meeting match requirements, like meeting match in a remote environment as well, services for survivors of trafficking, and more. We also have informational documents to help you reach your goals and missions, such as that meeting match in a remote environment, or discussing different grant opportunities and proposals and strategies that you might seek out. And finally, we have sample documents that you'd be able to download and use on your own, such as sample MOUs and subaward agreements. I'd really like to focus a little bit more on the customized coaching, because I think this is something that is pretty unique that we're able to offer organizations. So we partner with organizations in a collaborative process to achieve your mission, vision, and goals. We conduct that proactive outreach, but organizations also come to us requesting assistance. And when they come to us, they don't always know exactly the type of assistance they're looking for. They just know that this might be a good resource that they would like to tap into. So we work with them through conversations to identify first what your challenges are. Once we kind of hone in on different service areas that we can work with you on, we create a multidisciplinary team, which can include subject matter experts from the field, and create a detailed response plan. This response plan is an overview of what we're going to work on together during our engagement. Our engagements can be up to 90 days. We have a wide variety of wide variety of length when it comes to these types of services, which I'll get into. But we can work up to 90 days with an organization. And that response plan tells us, how we're going to approach the challenges and what goals we have and what strategies we're going to implement to overcome those challenges and meet those goals during those 90 days. So we work collaboratively to implement the response plan, achieve the goals, and we can focus on a wide range of service areas. Some examples are community outreach, partnership building, sustainment strategies for grant funding or private funding, or looking at foundations, internal operations, enhancing or building out direct services, and more. So as long as the ultimate goal of the organization and what we work on is to help you serve survivors of trafficking, we really can kind of help you with your challenges. When we work with an organization to build capacity, we ensure that our response is curated to their needs. So we have the ability, as I mentioned before, to work on numerous topic areas as long as it helps an organization to serve all survivors of trafficking. So we've worked with organizations to, for example, create a strategic plan on how they want to build out, their services. So off the top of your head, you might not think that is directly related, but we all understand that this all helps you build capacity in general at your organization, and therefore build capacity to serve survivors of trafficking. So we hope to be able to offer you that assistance. We all know that there's lots of wonderful resources out there, but they're not always intuitively found or navigated. So one of our services is focused on helping orgs find and navigate resources, such as available grant opportunities and financial resources to support their work, which leads me to speaking a little bit about some new services that we recently rolled out. The center has been doing this work for a few years, and in that time, we've noticed that there has been a definite need in the field for organizations struggling with funding and program development and strategies around that, especially when it comes to the grant landscape. So we rolled out these services to try and provide a low barrier opportunity for you to get curated assistance and get your questions answered. So first, we have monthly office hours. We hold our office hours every third Thursday of the month for 1 hour, and people may come and go as they please, listen into the discussion, ask questions to the subject matter expert who will be facilitating the office hours, and as well as connect with other organizations. We also offer one-on-one coaching sessions. These are 90-minute coaching sessions focused on your organization and your needs with the subject matter expert. And then finally, we will be offering a annual cohort, which will be a 4-week, 2 hours a week crash course on program and funding development and strategies, especially to those organizations who are new to grant funding. So to just provide a kind of overview on the level of services that we offer resources that you can come into our resource library and check and see what's available for you. The office hours, which are just once a month for 1 hour, but then you can get a little bit more comprehensive and do a 90-minute coaching session, or talk to us about doing a more comprehensive 90-day engagement. So we hope that somewhere on that sliding scale, the assistance will be right for you. Finally, we focus on strengthening networks. So we hope to build a strong community of anti-trafficking organizations, tribes, and coalitions, which we do in a few different ways. For one, we can connect organizations across the nation who are focused on the same service area if they're looking to exchange best practices or discuss, say you're new to housing survivors of trafficking and you'd like to speak to an organization that has been doing that for many years and they're well established. We can help facilitate that connection. We can also connect you to communities already established in your area, such as coalitions and task forces or national grantees. So to reiterate, if you are interested in expanding or strengthening or growing your anti-trafficking work, and any of these kind of questions pop out at you, we'd really love for you to reach out to either myself or the center. This is our contact information. So we have a general contact email address that you can reach out to, or this is my personal contact that you might reach out to. We also have a phone number that you can call and leave a voicemail at, and we also welcome you to look at our website as well, once again. Yep, that's all for me.
Okay, thanks so much for joining us again, Elizabeth, and for the wealth of information that you share. Just wanted to do a shout out to Alexander Delgado. I'm pretty sure you know who he is, since he's very much involved also with the Trafficking Victims Assistance Program. So we can do a shout out to him. He's an attendee, so he's not able to wave or say hello at this point, but he's joined us in prior webinars. So appreciate your being another resource that we could tap on also. And to our attendees, we will again have Elizabeth's slides up on our website for everyone to be able to provide additional information to you. So thanks so much for being a part of our presentation today. And so waiting in the wings, we've got Lainey, who's also on, waiting patiently. There you are. Okay, let me just get you situated here. And I know I've got your other colleagues. Are they shy now? Are they saying that
they might be?
I'm going to promote them anyways and see if they'll open their, what do you call that? their cameras to say hello, but I figured they figured that you've got this. So just wanted to introduce Lainey. She's a training and technical assistance specialist with a rather new technical assistance provider, and that's the OJP for Office of Justice Programs, right? Correct
Yes.
me if I'm wrong. Territorial Financial Support Center. She provides capacity building and victim services expertise to a variety of projects with ICF, including OVC, the Training and Technical Assistance Center. She has 30 years of experience in the victim services field, which included serving as executive director of Colorado Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And yes, now that I see you in real life, I remember you now at those meetings we used to have. So thanks so much, Lainey. So appreciate your being part of our session today. And I know your colleagues, Russ and Nicole, are online, and I think they're shy right now. So let me get your PowerPoint situated.
Okay.
And, we thank you so much for waiting in the wings for us.
We are absolutely honored to be part of this. And I can honestly say I've attended the day 1 and 2. I love the traditional healing piece. That was really interesting. I really enjoyed being part of it. So thank y'all again for including us. I truly feel honored after hearing all the other people and organizations that have gone before us. Amazing organization, amazing services. So let's just get started. So good morning, good evening. I'm calling in from Charleston, South Carolina on the East Coast. And we really appreciate y'all hanging in there. We'll just kind of give you a picture of what the services we provide, and you can reach out to us if you have more questions. Next slide, Cynthia. So OJP, in collaboration with the Territorial Financial Support Center, are working together to help grantees of OJP provide or build, enhance, develop a better infrastructure around financial and grants management. So OJP is working with us at the Territorial Financial Support Center to offer free support to any OJP Office of Justice Programs grantees and sub-grantees. We were established, as Cynthia said, back in September 2020, so we're still pretty new. And we did a needs assessment back in the winter of 2020 to just find out what were the territorial needs around financial and grants management. And so based on that, and then we've done some initial meetings and calls with OJP grantees. We are building various resources, guide sheets, webinars, training series, and doing customized TA. So let's talk a little bit about what that might cover. Next slide, Cynthia. So these are a range of topics that we will cover, and it will be through the guide sheets, checklists, webinars, but things like, just to be a little bit more specific, for example, our first webinar will be on just grants and ASAP. We know that some grantees are having some challenges maneuvering through those systems, so we're going to bring in the experts from just grants and ASAP to really talk about how that works and answer questions for the territorial OJP grantees. Other things might be training on financial management policies and procedures for grantees and their sub-grantees. Maybe people want to know more about how to prevent fraud, how to monitor sub-grantees or sub-awards, things like that. So pretty much anything that is related to financial management and grants management, we are here at no cost to you to help you with. So if you go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about how that happens. So as I said, we have these tools and resources, which are going to be guide sheets and job aids and checklists and things like that. We also have the TFC website, which is the website listed at the bottom. We also have a virtual support center. which is where you can email us and ask a question. And it could be something as simple as what are the reporting dates for OJP, financial reports, or programmatic reports. And you will have someone that responds pretty much, I would say, at least within 24 hours. Nicole Zamora Nesbitt, who's also online, is our financial specialist, and she'll be responding. But it also could be something as a little bit more challenging as like, how do we negotiate an indirect cost rate, things like that. So kind of nothing's off limits at the Virtual Support Center. And if it needs to be more than an email, we'll reach out, we'll call, we'll schedule time to meet, talk, so that we really understand your question and can provide that assistance. We also have what we call a learning exchange live discussion webinars and peer sharing webinars. And those are all going to be around the needs that the territorial grantees and sub-grantees have said, this is what's important to us. This is what we need more information on. This is what will help us. And then we have the customized training, TTA, training and technical assistance. And basically that can be via the phone, via email, Zoom meetings, and once the pandemic is kind of moved on, we hope that we can come out and be on site. And that customized TTA can be about creating that financial management infrastructure so that you're really running your grants well. Or maybe you've had an audit, maybe you've had your program manager come out and say there's some concerns or there's some issues that you need to resolve, and we are here to help you work on those if you would like that. So we can help you come into compliance. We can help kind of work with you on whatever those issues are. So if you'll go to the next slide, Cynthia. So this is how you contact us, the Virtual Support Center. There's the email. If you want to do a scheduled consultation call, please do that. And there's the link or the website for that. There's also the website that you can kind of look through and see the resources that we offer, things like that. So kind of check that out. And then if you'll go to the next slide. And I just wanted to introduce our team. This is the Pacific Island Training and Technical Assistance team. And we're really focusing again on the financial management capacity of the grantees. And we're staffed by financial and training and technical assistance specialists. Plus we have lots of other support staff to help deliver this multi-level TTA services to the grantees. We have a lot of subject matter expertise in financial management. And the team is, the team, which is Russ, Nicole, and myself, are assigned to the Pacific Islands. So we're here for the Northern Mariana, Guam, and American Samoa Islands to provide that technical assistance. So if we can go to the next slide. And here's our contact information. Francis Mendez is the project director. Russ's email, mine, and Nicole. So if you have any questions or want to just reach out and check in with us on maybe a specific issue or concern, please do so, because we are available to help in whatever way is would be useful to y'all. So that,
Great.
I think, is 9:01. And again, we thank you so much for having us and appreciate being part of this. And we hope to hear from y'all. Thanks, Cynthia.
Yes, and actually, you know, folks, we really look forward to your evaluation surveys. After today's session, you'll get a reminder to please do that, because as we work closely with Lainey and the team, we certainly want to be able to look at facilitating more training, not just for the coalition, but also training that would be useful and helpful to you as well, so we can better coordinate that with them as well. So thank you so much to Lainey, to Russ, and Nicole, who are waiting in the shadows appreciated. And yes, I think I called it right that we'd be until 11 o'clock or 9 p.m. your time in South Carolina. So thank you so much for being on. Just wanted to do a shout out again to my team, because if not for them, you know, we wouldn't have been as close to seamless as possible. So that's certainly to Polly Ron, who's the co-host here, making sure that the IT issues are addressed. And then there's Dwayne and Taylor responding to your questions in the chat and the QA, and to see if you raise your hand to make sure that we've addressed your needs. And then to the team here in the office downstairs, that's to Marie, Nate, and Samantha, who are keeping me apprised if anyone calls, or if we have any other issues or concerns that we want to be able to share with you. And then to a big thank you to Catherine and Kaylin for joining us and providing this. So now I ask one last request. There's only been a handful of you who responded to the day 4 information, and we just ask that you register one more time for tomorrow. We are using the Zoom, which one are we to? We're using the Zoom meetings format. So with that, we will be breaking out into sessions. The panelists, other than the key welcome remarks by our Lieutenant Governor, Josh Tenorio, the other panelists that we will be having would be all of you. So we ask for your kind participation and collaboration as we hear from you also on the issues. So think about it. It's about training, it's about data, it's about the intersection of culture and violence prevention, and then 2, the role of partnerships. And we'll have our team here facilitate the discussions, but we're featuring your comments and ideas. So we look forward to you tomorrow for signing up. And then on that note, without further ado, we want to say thank you and check out the website for more information. We want to thank Alyssa, our ASL interpreter, along with Kanai, who's also with the coalition, for providing that, and for our closed captions with Aberdeen Broadcast Services, who are quickly signing off as well. So appreciate you all for staying up with us. Thank you so much to all of our presenters today who are still on. There's Michelle, Jane, Elizabeth, and there was Catherine also. And for those of you in the East Coast, good night, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.